треба ні конфлікту, ні війни. Та ми готові всіх вас слать до сатани. Тисячі вже полягло, і все більше шверхуйло. То для них нема нічого, крім труни. Going home, Russian soldiers, going home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з багном. зустрічаємо з багном. Від стрія до волновахи чутно клич, ідіть нахуй,
Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великой страны.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння, різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів. Робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, та вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить. Хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар? Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ. Тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар. Байрактар. Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Байрактар.
everyone, I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, everybody, and welcome back to day 128 of the news.
And of course, we're going to be reporting the past 24 hours of the war in Ukraine here on day 128, and we have some very interesting news. We got reports today, along with video evidence, showing the Russians attacking their own forces that they left on Snake Island, destroying the remainder of the equipment that they weren't able to take out in their hasty retreat from the island. We'll, of course, be covering that today, and, later on tonight in our schedule. But I would like to give a special shout out because my grandmother, which I rarely ever see, is actually watching my stream tonight. She doesn't have any internet at her home. She's actually here in my house tonight watching it in another room. So I just wanted to give a shout out to my grandmother who's watching right now because I know she would greatly appreciate that. And she always says she's very proud of me. And so I just wanted to let her know. Thank you so much once again, like everyone else in the Lee Spring Army, for the support. And it's always great to know that there's a lot of people who are backing us up and helping us to keep on running this news. And so with that, let's get into tonight's schedule. Starting off, we'll be beginning in the Russian area of the world in Moscow. We have, once again, some really interesting stuff coming out of the Russian TV, specifically what they say. And once again, it's kind of asinine stuff. But we'll be taking a look at that. And after we do that, we'll then be moving on. I see everyone giving support to my grandmother, and that's really nice of all of y'all. And after that, we're going to be moving on into the location unknown area, and everyone's going crazy with my grandmother, Enforcer grandmother. Maybe we'll make that a t-shirt or something. Anyways, we're then going to move on to the location unknowns, which we have about 7 of them, and we'll be covering, of course, the location unknowns. After we cover the location unknowns and the Russia segment, we're then going to move on to the Kharkiv area and the northern Donbass. But before we get there, we're going to answer 3 questions from the chat. After we answer those 3 questions, we're then going to be moving on to the Kharkiv area as well as the northern Donbass through Luhansk in general. After we cover all of the northern Donbass and Kharkiv news, we're then going to be moving down to the southern front to cover the remainder of the news, and also what the thumbnail and the title are about tonight at Snake Island. And after we, but before we get there, of course, I always have to give this disclaimer. Before we get there, we're going to answer another 3 questions from the chat. After we answer those, we'll then move on through the southern front and the rest of the news around the world. We have a little bit from Germany and a little bit from the United States today. And I highly suggest, if you've not stayed around for the southern segment ever, I suggest you stick in for a penny and for a pound kind of tonight, because the news we got from Germany was literally insane. It's the most advanced future tech sounding thing I've ever heard of. So of course we're going to be covering that later on near the end of the stream, but it is crazy. So we're going to of course be covering that later, but we're going to be starting off in Moscow tonight with our first bit of news, where we can see Russia's intellectuals all in one room. They have literally handpicked the finest and the brightest people in Russia to be here on this show, and let's see what they're saying. Of course, the subtitles are cut out almost halfway for y'all on y'all's screen, and so I'm going to read off the subtitles and let y'all know what they're saying. Anyways, with that, let's get to the video. We should assume the proactive role instead of a reactionary response to situations. An approach that is constantly praised... Wait a minute, what? That went by so fast. An approach that is constantly praised by some. We should move on to active measures. Because the old world has come to an end. As President Putin said, if the West intends to continue to deliver weapons to the fascist regime of Ukraine, the transport system in Ukraine should be eliminated. There should be no tunnel in the Carpathian Mountains through which many of these deliveries arrive. There should be no bridges over the Dnieper River. There should be no electricity either. And every Ukrainian should know whom to blame. These people who brought... wait a minute, what? Hang on, let me go back. Sorry about that. Those people who brought fascists to power in 2014 have been giving them weapons and money for 8 years, and are currently continuing to do that. This remarkable gang of thieves and murderers ahead of us is an energy crisis. So once again, one of Russia's best and brightest intellectuals, and we can see them, of course, pouring out the constant dribble that they always do. This man is literally demanding that the Russians go on the attack, and I don't think he realizes it, but they are fighting an offensive war in a foreign country, having crossed the Russian border and entered Ukraine, and that in its own right, if we look down here, you can notice the Ukrainians aren't in Russia, the Russians are in Ukraine, and so in that right, they have already taken the offensive, so I don't know what he's talking about. They should become proactive and push an attack. That doesn't make any sense from a logical standpoint of what we're looking at. And then on top of that, he moves on to say, we ought to obliterate the Ukrainians' infrastructure, energy, transport, everything, and then blame them and the West for what's happened to them, because they ought to know. And on top of another thing, there seems to be this conspiracy theory that's surrounding in pro-Russian circles, both in Russia and, their supporters around the world, that the Ukrainian government that we see today was installed in power by the West. And that's not true. No one actually had an active involvement in the Maidenhead riots of 2014. That was entirely an internal Ukrainian affair. Had nothing to do with Western interference whatsoever, as far as we can assess historically. And so that statement is entirely wrong. That was actually a complete movement by the Ukrainian public. I would say it's very similar to the French Revolution, except they didn't have any kind of reign of terror afterwards, and they didn't execute the standing government at the time. But very similar. It was led by the people of Ukraine, and so they are the ones who put the government that's there right now in power, pretty much. So I don't know, unless if he's trying to strike at the Ukrainians to show them that they're the fault of their own demise, that's just a really sick thing to say. And on top of that, he's also wanting to knock out their electrical infrastructure and put them all into darkness without any kind of ways for heating or cooling, if the Ukrainians even have air conditioners. I don't think they do. Most countries don't. They're wanting to knock out the railroads, the bridges, anything. I mean, this guy is literally demanding for the destruction of modern civilization in Ukraine. And he's going off of the guise of, well, the Western people put them in power. But historically, there's nothing to back up these claims, just like everything else that Russia says. Just constant dribble pouring out of their mouths. And surprisingly, these people are claimed to be the intellectuals of Russia. And if those people are, then I don't know how the Russians have been appraised and claimed to be so smart and so wise. And I know there's definitely smarter people out there in Russia than what they're putting on TV. With that, we're now going to be moving on into Ukraine, where, of course, we have a bit of location unknown news. Now, a lot of y'all may have seen this video in the short summary today, and a lot more people have been watching the short summaries. We actually changed the title format, and it seems to be a lot more interesting now instead of just listing them off day by day. So I'm glad that a lot of people are watching them and getting little tidbits of news throughout the day and able to see the stuff on the fly. But this video was shown in that short clip earlier, just giving a heads up, but this is the Ukrainian Special Forces ambush behind the lines. We don't really see this much. Special Forces operations behind lines is an incredibly risky thing to do, especially considering how modern war has evolved, where you can pretty much see where everyone is at all times with the use of a simple drone. It's very hard to conduct these kinds of operations, but we can see the Ukrainians conducting them with a pretty decent amount of skill and actually taking out a Russian unit. We can now see them moving forward, and a lot of people in the short video actually pointing out this guy's sick-looking bullpup, and I have to agree, they've got some good guns in the Special Forces unit here, like this one. We can now see him running out of the bush, running to the street, and he starts firing straight into this car that's been commandeered by the Russians. In a second, we're about to see some drone footage of the destroyed car. Give it just right there, and there's the car they took out. And now you can see two cars coming up on both sides. I think these may be cars from the Ukrainian Special Forces. And we're about to... Actually, no. Correction. Let me change that. I think these may be Russian cars, because you can see them carting out men in stretchers into these civilian cars. And so I think these are all Russian commandeered vehicles. The Ukrainian forces, of course, lit this one up. And then the Russians, considering they have almost no military vehicles left and they're using nothing but civilian vehicles, just rolled up in some more Ladas pretty much and started loading up the remaining survivors or the dead as well into these cars to cart them off. A great attack by the Ukrainians, and this kind of stuff, although not incredibly effective, this isn't going to change the tide of the war. This is instilling a massive amount of fear into the average Russian soldier, because he doesn't know if driving down a normal country road behind the lines may be his last moments on Earth. And that's always something incredibly scary to think about, is the unpredictability of when something might get you. And that's something very important, and I think these special forces are definitely doing a good job at it, as you could tell that these Russians in this car definitely weren't suspecting it. With that, we're now going to be moving on to the next bit of location unknown news, where we can then see an M777 destroying a warehouse. The Ukrainians just keep on getting good use out of the M777s, and I'm sure that the U.S., well, I definitely feel proud, and I'm sure that the entirety of the United States feels proud that we sent over some of our artillery systems that are proving their worth in weight in Ukraine right now. Guess you could say these are... Oh, wait a minute. I didn't expect it to happen yet. I watched the beginning of this video, but I forgot that it happened so early. We can see the artillery shell hit the ammo stowage, and it literally goes up like a Roman candle. There is nothing left in that building, probably, after that first shot. An impeccable shot. Brilliant accuracy. And we can see that the Ukrainian artillery, paired with American excellence and British design, proves disastrous results for the Russians, like we can see here. I don't think they'll be getting any ammunition out of that little building right there, rather than some bits and pieces. So with that, a wonderful video to see, and very impressive at that. So once again, I do have to say that I'm very proud as an American. I'm sure many Americans are proud that we did send over those M777s, because they are showing that they are incredibly capable artillery pieces. And that's something that a lot of people were actually worrying about prior to the war, is that the United States towed and rocket artillery units are actually incredibly small in comparison to the sheer numbers that the Russians were able to field. But now we can see that quality over quantity kind of doctrine, and we can see that the Western artillery is just so qualitative over the Russians' quantitative means that it just can level the playing field even when it's outnumbered heavily. And in this instance, we can see that they're going to ensure that the Russian artillery has nothing to fire back at them with. So with that, we're now going to be moving on to the next bit of Location Unknown news, where we can see a Russian tank get hit. We don't see that on film, but we do see the tank backing up and then going out of control as the entire crew, perfectly fine as we can appear, it appears that they're all alive and breathing, hop out of the tank and go running for the hills. We can see the tank has been hit, but we couldn't see it on film. We can now see the tank slightly going into reverse. We can now see one of the crew members has already gotten off. The other one's getting out of the turret and climbing out as well, along with the other, and they are booking it. The tank hasn't even been put in park. It's just still rolling, but they are gone. Probably running back to Belgorod. They even forgot the washing machine that they put inside that tank. Of course, incredible to see. I'm happy to know that the Ukrainians are hitting these tanks, and it's interesting to see for one of the first times that we actually saw the Russian crews survive in its entirety, and they all got out and ran for the hills. So hopefully they run for the Ukrainian side of the lines and they surrender themselves. I'm sure that'll end a lot better for them than going back to the Russians. But the Russians will just throw them in probably a brand new tank. Well, brand new is in about a 60-year-old tank, and then send them back up to the front lines to then get killed probably. So hopefully they surrender themselves, and I think that may have knocked a little bit of sense into them literally. With that, we're now going to be moving on to our next bit of Location Unknown news, where we can then see a crab in action. We know that the Ukrainians have had a massive problem with getting crabs. Usually they're getting them from the Polish, and it appears that the crabs just keep on spreading. And now we can see the Ukrainians are even proud of their crabs. We can see the crab rolling out here. They put it in black and white film like it's a World War II film, which is really cool to me. Let me see if they're playing music. They are. I hate that. You now see it come to a stop. Let me see if there's music here. Oh, there's still music. I hate that, y'all. I'm sorry about that. Well, you now see the crabs getting ready to fire. And look how clean it is. This thing is brand spanking new. Now, with the older tanks, I would always give the credit to the Ukrainians for keeping them incredibly clean. But these things, these crabs from Poland, are pretty much fresh off the press. And so they are clean just because they're this new. So a huge testament to the Polish, a huge thanks to them as well, because they're one of the few countries that are sending brand new equipment straight to the front for Ukraine. The United States is sending over incredibly competent equipment, but a lot of it is secondhand. We've already used it for a decent time, and then it's put in storage, and so they're not the newest of new. But this crab, as you can see right here, is brand spanking new, and it looks wonderful. This is something you'd almost see on a car lot for sale. Anyways, I'm going to let the video continue. We now see them loading a shell. The crab, of course, fires a 155mm round, which is the standard caliber for all NATO artillery pieces. The M777, the Caesar, the Panzerhaubitze 2000, they all use a 155mm shell. We can see it firing right there. And I don't know if we'll see the end result here soon. But man, every time I look at the inside of this SPG, it is just so clean, and it looks so nice too. Never before has having crabs been a good thing. Usually when someone says, I have crabs, you think of something bad. But for the Ukrainians, hopefully the music's gone. Nope, it's still here. For the Ukrainians, having crabs is an excellent thing, and in fact, they're trying to share a little bit of their crabs with the Russians. Not really handing it over per se, but inflicting the nasty side of crabs on them. We now see the gun firing again. The breach opens. And look at that recoil. That's some strong recoil right there for sure. And that gun has some very, very good springs in it. That's something that a lot of heavier caliber guns and tanks have, is some kind of a spring recoil system. And that thing has at least several feet of springs in it because that gun is like on a cushion nearly. I bet the Ukrainians are proud to have this thing. It's very cool to watch. And I have to say that I'm just so proud that the Polish gave them something brand new. And I've said that about 3 times at this point, but the fact that it is literally straight off the press and they could have kept this stuff and give the Ukrainians older equipment that was Soviet era says a lot about the Polish and how much they support the Ukrainians in this war. With that is the end of the video, and we're now going to be moving on to our next bit of location unknown news, where we've seen a captured MTLB and a MISTA-B. Quite the find. We rarely ever see an MTLB towing around an artillery system. It's actually called a Nona, but to me it kind of looked like a MISTA-B, so sorry for the mislabeling there. But you can see that this thing is clearly marked with a Z, which means that this was a captured Russian APC. So let's take a look. What a find. Not only did they get an artillery piece perfectly intact, but they also got the armored personnel carrier that can drag it around perfectly intact too. A great steal of a deal, 2 for the price of 1. So glad to see it. Hope the Ukrainians do put this to good use soon, but of course they'll have to scrub off those Z's on the side before they ever use it. But still, great find, and we haven't seen the Ukrainians capturing a lot of stuff like this recently, at least on film, so I wanted to make sure to point this out because it does show that the Ukrainians are still overrunning Russians to the point that they're able to capture some of their equipment. With that, we're now going to be moving on to the next bit of location unknown news, where we can see some Ukrainian MiG-29s in flight, but I can tell you with certainty that this film was made before the war, and I'll explain why. So here in the footage, you can see these MiG-29s flying over Ukraine, and there's several things that point out that this is pre-war, and I wanted to point this out because, one, some of y'all may be wandering around and may think that this is from recently, and 2, I just wanted to show the video, but on top of that, I want to make it clear that this isn't something that happened today. First things first, the aircraft are too close together. In a real combat situation, aircraft usually have around a half-mile spacing in between them, or around a quarter-mile spacing if the formation is very tight. Now, that's one thing I can speak with certainty. I do have a relative that's in the Air Force, and I remember he told me almost everything he knew about how F-15s flew, and he said that the average formation, at least in the U.S. Air Force, was around a half-mile to a quarter-mile apart from each other, and these aircraft are way closer than a quarter-mile. The second thing is that there's no weapons on the pylons. And what y'all are wondering is, what is a pylon? You know, some of y'all from Canada or Britain may be thinking that those are the orange traffic cones. Some of y'all may be thinking of other things. But to explain without really pulling up too many pictures, aircraft in the modern day cannot fight without missiles. And we don't see any missiles on this plane. And if it was actually a combat situation, like a war, like we're in right now, these things would be loaded to the brim with air-to-air missiles, and we don't see that, which tells me that this was certainly pre-war footage. Still great nonetheless. We do see a lot of Ukrainian MiG-29s in flight, and it's always a wonderful sight to see the Ukrainian Air Force in flight. We rarely see them these days, but we do know that they're still out there, and they're still whipping the Russians here and there. And we also have a little bit of footage to confirm that today as well. With that, we're now going to be moving on to the last bit of location unknown news, where we can see some toasting and some roasting. The Ukrainians are just giving them the whole 9 yards here, and out here in the distance, we can see a Russian BTR, it appears, that's doing a little bit of toasting and roasting. Don't know if the crew made it out, but it is great to know that the Ukrainians are still holding their ground and making the Russians pay for every inch they may take.
сука, буде з кожним, нахуй!
And I'm going to have to mute it there. It does have copyrighted music. But a little bit of toasting. A little bit of roasting. We can see that it's doing a little bit of snap, crackling, and popping out there as well. We might want to call Rice Krispies or Kellogg's so that way they can file a lawsuit for copyright infringement. Yeah, I don't think Rice Krispies is going to be happy with that one. That's the end of the video, but it was a good one to see. And what a series of ammo explosions there. I don't know how the ammo was spaced out in the vehicle to cause so many separate explosions. Usually you just see one large one followed by several small ones, but each one was about the same in size. Really interesting to me, kind of bizarre actually. We haven't really seen that much over the 4.5 months of the war, but still a great video at that. With that, we've now covered all of the Russia and location unknown news, and so we're now going to start moving towards the Kharkiv and northern Donbass area. But before we, well, yeah, northern Donbass, I want to make sure. Sometimes I get Donetsk and Donbass mixed up. But with that, before we get there, we're going to answer 3 questions from the chat. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, folks, so it is now time for the first question segment. As always, I want to mention that if you want to put in a question without supporting the channel, feel free to tag either me or the enforcer in your message, and I will put it in the spreadsheet, and hopefully we can get to them all before the stream ends tonight. So, for our first super chat, we have a very generous $52 donation from Junebug, without the 72 at the end, and also a $50 donation from BC Skyman. So thank you very much to both of you. Y'all are both channel legends, and we appreciate you watching the streams. And I'm sure the enforcer wants to add 2 bits to that, so I'll let him take over from here.
I certainly do. I want to thank both of y'all. Not just for the support, but for being longtime supporters of this channel. Y'all been here day in and day out, and regardless whether y'all support this channel or not, I'm just incredibly proud to know that we have viewers that are incredibly loyal to this channel and enjoy what we do. And I thank you so much. Y'all have both, at times, added in very interesting things into the live chat that I've seen and we've responded to sometimes. And I've got to say, it's an absolute joy to have y'all here, and I thank y'all so much once again for the support, because it does help us keep running this channel. And I know y'all know that about as good as well as anyone, because y'all been here for a while. But I thank y'all both once again for the support. And with that, we're going to move on to the next one. Just want y'all to know we're very appreciative.
All right, and moving on to the next one, we have a $20 super chat from Smokey Valdez, who says, "What are your predictions for the summer?"
Ooh. Wow, that's a great question, because we're almost halfway through the summer already. Surprise, surprise. It's really honestly crazy to believe. In my head, it still feels like March or April, but this has been going on for 128 days now. If I was to predict what was going to happen, I hate to say this, but the Ukrainians are in a very tough position right now in Lysychansk, and so I could see them withdrawing from the city within the coming weeks. That's something that I think may happen. However, I don't think it's going to be as bad as people assume. They will, of course, lose the defensive ridges that they have along the Seversky Donets River, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. There's a lot of geographical features in this area. There's a decent hill range that pretty much spans the entire length of the river, and especially around Severodonetsk and Lysychansk, it's one of the few places in the country where there's like a hilly kind of a ecosystem, or an environment, I guess you could say. And so I think the Ukrainians will have to pull back and set up new defensive lines elsewhere, but the Russians are going to have to be taking some heavy losses to take this city. We can already see right now that the Ukrainians have poured more reinforcements into the area, and so they're not going to be giving up Lysychansk without making the Russians pay in blood for every single city block. So in that perspective, I do think the Ukrainians are going to lose Lysychansk, but at the same time, it's not going to be lost without a fight, and it's not going to be lost without the Russians seriously questioning the continuance of this war. Honestly, I can't really go further than that, because I always want to say I'm not a crystal ball. I don't know how this is exactly going to turn out, and I could see that happening within the next 2 or 3 weeks. But beyond that, there's so many things that could change, that could happen internationally and within both Ukraine and Russia, that could lead to things that I can't even see coming right now. So I hope that kind of answers the question in a way, at least in the short term, of what's going to probably happen over July. But that's kind of what I'm seeing right now, what appears to be developing. And just to explain why, because I never want to say that the Ukrainians are on the back foot without a reason, the Russians have been pushing behind Lysychansk to the south. And that's a very bad position. If the Ukrainians don't keep a strong defensive line down here, as instead of in the city, the Russians could break through and cut off the T-1302, which is the only road that heads into Lysychansk. And at that point, the Ukrainians will be besieged. And then you will have countless thousands of Ukrainian soldiers that are ending up in a situation like Mariupol, where their whole entire purpose is to just try and survive to another day and try and tie up as many Russian forces as possible, which, while heroic and while it's pretty much martyrdom, it's not necessarily the best thing to do in a war. And I think the Ukrainian commanders do see that, and that's why we were thinking and kind of seeing some idea that the Ukrainians would be withdrawing from the city soon, but then they made a snap decision to bring in even more reinforcements to try and hold the area and make the Russians bleed for it. So that's what I'm thinking. I hope that does answer the question, and I thank you once again for that really good question and also the support. And with that, we're going to move on to the final question of this segment, and then we're going to move on to the Kharkiv and northern Donbass region.
And real quick, I want to mention the poll that was just up a moment ago. It looked like, well, first of all, the question was, how many of you are going on vacation for the 4th of July weekend? And it looks like most of you said that you're going to be staying home for the 4th of July weekend. It looked like 90% of you said that. So we are too. So don't feel bad. We'll be here with you the entire weekend. So you get plenty of news and you can enjoy your 4th at your house like we're doing. So
Yeah.
with that being said, yeah. So with that being said, we are on to our last super chat, which is from Kaltenberg, who puts in a $20 donation and says, "Free Königsberg."
And I agree. Free Königsberg. I think we should make an agreement with Russia. And here's should be our agreement. We will lift some of the sanctions if you give Kaliningrad, Königsberg to Germany. I think that would be a fair exchange. Or say that they could give that up and make it some kind of a small country. Like on its own, just call it like East Prussia or something like that. But I think that would honestly be a pretty good one. Honestly, looking at it seriously, that probably would never happen. But still, it's really good thinking, and I like the idea. So thank you very much once again for the support, Kaltenberg, and also the good idea there. I wish it could happen, but sadly, I just think reality would hold it back. But I'm 100% behind the idea. So with that, usually you say Slava Ukraine, and so I'm going to make sure to say Slava Ukraini. And with that, we've now reached the end of this question segment, and we're now going to move on to the Kharkiv and northern Donbass news. And so with that, let's get straight into it. Starting off into the Kharkiv salient, we have seen today a T-72B3 get obliterated. And when I say obliterated, this thing got vaporized, so I'm just going to let y'all see the video because it speaks for itself in a way. There's the T-72B3, or what's left of it. Perfect place to smoke some hams right now. I mean, like, it would have a very full, smoky flavor. It wouldn't taste like hickory. Most likely taste like burned aluminum and maybe some quartz as well. There's a decent amount of quartz in Russian composite armor. I see everyone keeps on asking my grandmother questions. I don't know if they're still watching. I'm sure I'll get an answer to that here in a second. But, I love that everyone loves that my grandmother's watching. That's actually pretty funny to me. But let's see. We keep on seeing the tank burning. I was just checking out something there, seeing if I got a response. Tank smoldering, cooking. You know what, Matthew? Run a poll. What would everyone like to cook on top of that tank, considering it's more like a smoker? Just put up anything you want, like bacon, smoked hams, anything. We'll see what people want. I see a lot of people put up smoked spam. Jimmy Rogers just had a great idea. Throw up smoked spam as one of the options, and let's see what people would be roasting and smoking on top of this tank. Man, oh man, I think we just got Mark Zuckerberg in the chat watching this because we know he loves to smoke some meats. And now the video loops over again, but a T-72B3 just got obliterated right before our eyes, and that's always a good thing to see. With that, we're now going to be moving on to the next bit of news from the Kharkiv salient, where we've also seen an ammo depot being destroyed by Ukrainian artillery. And everyone's going wild in the chat. Everyone's putting in what they want to smoke. Hopefully Matthew will have a poll up for that soon, so that way we can get some answers. There we go. Oh, you put up Lee Springs. That was a really good one. Good job, Matthew.
Yes.
Now we can see the Ukrainian artillery raining down on this ammo depot. And every time we see Ukrainian artillery raining down on a depot, I don't say this enough anymore, but I have to make sure to say it now. Every time a depot like this is destroyed, the Russians are losing something more valuable than men and more valuable than tanks. They're losing the ability to actually use their men and their tanks. If they run out of gas, the tanks can't run. If they run out of food, the soldiers can't live. And so hitting these kinds of supply depots is vitally important to Ukraine's defense because the Russians have to hurry to try and replace those losses of supplies, and a lot of them are irreplaceable, and they're running down the stocks of what they've had stored up. So great to see them hitting another supply depot, and hopefully as we go through today's news, which you will see, there is more examples of this happening just today. With that, we don't really have any news from the northern Kharkiv salient right now as to what's really happening up here. We don't know if the Ukrainians are still pushing counterattacks. It seems like the activity by and large has stalled and neither side is really doing much of anything. We know that the Russians up here were almost shattered at a point and completely disorganized to the point that the DPR and LPR troops who were stuck up here were trying to cross the border, and the Russians were threatening to blow them away if they ever did such a thing. It looks like they may have been able to regain their position a little bit, but it appears that it doesn't really matter as the Ukrainians aren't pushing it like they used to be. Still, wonderful news to know that the Russians aren't having any activity up there, because no news on their end is good news, and it shows that they are doing absolutely nothing up there. Moving past Chuhuiv and also Balaklia, we've had no news to speak of in these areas today, but down in the Izyum area, we have seen an unfortunate bit of news, but I do believe that this video may be old, and I'm just wanting to run it by y'all and see. We can see the Russians on drone camera firing at a Ukrainian bridge crossing that was on the Seversky Donets River somewhere near Izyum. It does appear that they were able to hit it, but I feel that I saw this video a long time ago. We can see them throwing down artillery onto this one bridge crossing. And now we're going to have to mute it. Surprisingly enough, there's not a lot of forces around this bridge. Has anyone noticed that rather than me? Because when the Russians are trying to cross a bridge, you have at least 2 BTGs on either side, or at least 1,600 men. And here we don't see a single Ukrainian soldier, as far as I can see. But we might get some more information to suggest otherwise here soon. Also, JB, you're absolutely right. They don't really feed their troops all too much anyways. And I'm speaking about the Russians when I say that, just for everyone to know. We see the artillery still pouring in, but still, no sign of Ukrainian life in the area. It doesn't even look like they're here. We can see something burning, though, in the water, but I don't know what that is, and the drone footage is so blurry, we can't really get an idea of what that may be. We can see a van here, and we can see a few Ukrainians, and it looks like they're dispersing from the vehicle and into the trees. We now see them popping the trunk. Looks like they're trying to get some stuff out. Hopefully we don't see them get hit here in a second. So we saw one Ukrainian car and something burning in the river, but beyond that we don't really see a lot of anything. Now we see the artillery raining down in an area where we don't see anything again. We see something white on the tree line, but I'm not sure if that's a car. So with that, that's the end of the video. We can see that the Russians apparently destroyed a Ukrainian bridgehead, but it looked like it wasn't even in use as far as we could tell because there was no Ukrainian forces nearby. So with that, we're now going to be moving out of the Izyum area. There's nothing to report up here beyond that, and I believe that may be old footage. The Izyum area has largely remained silent ever since the Russians were able to capture Lyman, because now Lyman is the faster route to Slovyansk instead of pushing from Izyum down the M03 to Slovyansk. That was their original plan. Their original plan was to push from the area of Popasna down to Bakhmut and from Izyum to Slovyansk, and this would create a massive encirclement that they would then starve the Ukrainians through and then cause a mass surrender and pretty much cripple the Ukrainian army in one swift blow. But it never happened. We never saw it come to be, and now the Russians are, of course, in the meat grinder that they have been in for around a month and a half. Moving past the Lyman area, which of course there is no news to report, We're now going to move towards the Seversky Donets River on the northern side of Lysychansk. Here we can see the 56th Brigade of the Ukrainian Armed Forces hitting the Russians with what appears to be an Izyum. So, here's the video. Let me see if there's music. There is. We can see, okay, alright, let's go back and dissect that real quick. We can see the Russian tank fire, the last thing it ever did. And then we can see the Ukrainian ATGM come in and hit it. It looks like someone went for some flight miles. It looks like the turret has decided to get a little tipsy. Maybe sideways, I guess is the best way to describe it. And we can now see the same footage from the actual Stugna launcher that hit that tank, it appears. We can see another tank moving down the road, and the Stugna is, of course, taking a good look at it, and it's decided that it no longer deserves to live. It's now fired a Stugna, and the Stugna is well on its way to hit the Russian tank. Boom goes the dynamite, and it looks like the tank just went up. We didn't really see a lot of the footage, but we could tell by that fiery explosion and what appeared to be fire erupting out of the top of the turret, that tank is certainly no more. With that, we're now going to be moving on into the area of Lysychansk itself, and I have to tell you all that today pitched fightings have been occurring in the forests south of the city, showing that the Ukrainians or the Russians may be trying to conduct another offensive. We can't really tell from the footage what it is. It looks like the Ukrainians may actually be the ones pushing the offensive against the Russians, but once again, it's really hard to tell from 12-second clips of firefight footage. Here we can see one of the firefights unfold south of Lysychansk. Firing in the distance, this Ukrainian soldier fires his RPG. And that's all we have from that video. We also have a second video showing a slightly different situation where the soldiers are prone on the ground, and it appears that they're taking cover from incoming fire. Here's that video. This is why I'm also kind of indecisive about what we're seeing down here in the Lysychansk area. One firefight shows them appearing to be conducting an offensive against the Russians. The other one shows them seemingly being pinned down by them, although they are returning fire. We can hear the bullets bouncing off the ground all around them. And we see that they are low to the ground, which means that they are most likely trying to take cover from the incoming fire. You see the soldier getting up, and it looks like he was about to move to another location, but the video ends right there. And it's really hard to tell what's going on in this area. The Russians may be pushing an offensive, or the Ukrainians may be pushing a counterattack. It's just incredibly hard to tell. But at this moment, that's all the information we have from the areas of the forests of Lysychansk. But we've also seen the Russians trying to push their offensive into Lysychansk itself, using an infamous toss. Today we saw a TOS thermobaric weapon system bombarding a chemical plant inside of Lysychansk. Here's the video of those TOS rockets hitting the plant. Also, it's a gelatine plant. I call it a chemical plant, but it produces gelatine. And for those of y'all who may not know, gelatine is what goes into gummy bears, in a way. But anyways, here's the video. You see the rockets pouring in. We don't know how many Ukrainian forces are here, if there are any, but of course, tosses are some dangerous stuff. The explosions actually suck the oxygen out of the air and can cause one's internal organs to liquefy, specifically the lungs. It's a very nasty weapon to be used, and it's just a dreadful thing, really. And so hopefully there were no Ukrainian soldiers that were wounded or killed in that barrage, but of course we can't really tell because we couldn't see what was actually on the ground. With that, right now, it appears that the Ukrainians are poised to hold Lysychansk for the foreseeable future, but I do not see a point right now, based off of what the front lines are looking like, where the Ukrainians will be able to hold Lysychansk indefinitely. I did say this at one point with Severodonetsk. I said they were most likely going to withdraw at some point, and then I said I don't really know anymore because it started to drag on for so long. But I do believe that what the Ukrainians are doing right now may be nothing more than a delaying tactic to bleed the Russians dry of every single bit of manpower they have to take this next piece of land, and then they're going to withdraw from it, because that's what they did in Severodonetsk, and so I believe they'll do the same thing here. I'm not going to get into the details of what they're going to do and how they're going to do it, But suffice it to say, that's most likely the strategy that the Ukrainians are going for at this point. And it's not a bad strategy. This is defense in depth. And for those of y'all who do not know, defense in depth, if I can pronounce that correctly, means that you have multiple defensive lines that you pretty much have pre-prepared. You bleed the enemy dry on the first line, and once they finally are about to overrun it, those forces withdraw into the secondary defensive line, and then the cycle begins again. And so while you're losing ground, you're inflicting so many losses on the enemy forces that the ground they have taken is practically worthless because the cost they had to endure to get it was pointless for the amount of gain they actually got. And I think that's what the Ukrainians' strategy at this point is in the area, and it's a good one because we see it's working. So far, that's been their strategy across the entire country for most of this war. And we've seen the Russians' ability to continue the war shrink as time's gone by. Within the first month of the war, we saw the entirety of Ukraine, pretty much from north to south, embroiled in war. As the second month came on, the entire northern area of the country just disappeared. The Russians withdrew. Then the fighting occurred along all of the front lines here in the south for a short while. The Ukrainians pulled back a little bit, but they made sure to make the Russians... made sure that it cost heavily for the Russians to take the land they did. Then we saw the Russians, of course, peter out. And now, for about the last month and a half, they've been pursuing this one very small offensive here. And we see the Ukrainians pulling the same tactic. It's pretty much something that the Russians have no defense against. Really, no military has defense against this. And so I think that the Russians are going to be running out of steam here soon, even if they are able to take Lysychansk. With that, we're going to move on to our last bit of news from this Lysychansk, I guess you could say, finger, before we move on to the rest of the Luhansk news. And we can see a compilation of footage from the 128th Mountain Assault Brigade. And so, here's the video. I think it does have music, but I'll check real quick. Yeah, it does. We see Ukrainian taking a hit on a jewel. You now see them moving through multiple different kinds of environments. I mean, there's so many of them, it's really hard to describe. We saw someone kicking a bucket. Oh, that was pretty funny. I like that. Look, oh, wait a minute, no, he's kicking a soccer ball. See him digging trenches, looking through drones, pulling off abandoned scrap. See them firing artillery. Suffice it to say, the 128th Mountain Assault Brigade has been busy and has been one of the main defending forces of the, I guess you could say, Severodonetsk Lysychansk finger. They've been there this entire time, and I don't know if the Ukrainians still give out battle honors to individual units, but I do believe that this unit should certainly get a battle honor for the Battle of Severodonetsk and Lysychansk, because they've definitely played a key role in its defense. That's the end of the video, but once again, huge credit to the 128th Mountain Assault Brigade that's been there through the entirety of this war and has continued to hold the line down there regardless of how hard it gets for those individual soldiers. I hope a lot of them do get commendations and medals as the war continues, and I hope that all of these Ukrainian veterans at the end of the war are well taken care of by the government for the sacrifice that they have given to defend the country of Ukraine. With that, we're now going to be moving out of the Severodonetsk and Lysychansk finger. I'm going to give Severodonetsk a little bit of credit. They're still there. And we're now going to be moving down into the region of Luhansk itself, and the controlled region that the Luhansk People's Republic technically has sovereignty all over, although we don't recognize them as a country here on this channel. Starting off, before we go all the way back into the heart of Luhansk, we can see that a Himars attack set a depot ablaze in the middle of the night. It had to have been a Himars attack because it was so far behind the lines that there's no way any other kind of artillery system could have hit it, but it was also so close to the front lines that the Ukrainians wouldn't have wasted any kind of a cruise or a ballistic missile on it to hit it. So this is another instance of a Himars attack destroying important Russian logistics and communications. In this case, a supply depot. A little bit of a fireworks show out there, I guess you could say. And I'm sure a lot of people are getting ready for that here in the United States with the 4th of July coming around. Y'all are going to be seeing a lot of this stuff here soon in America. But with that, great to see, and it's wonderful to know that the Himars are still being used very well. We did see a little bit of video evidence once they hit the lines, but beyond that, they've largely gone silent. So hopefully we continue to see some footage so that way we can see how American firepower is versing directly against the Russians. But with that, we're now going to be moving on to our last bit of news from the northern Donbass area, which is all the way back in the village of Rafinki. Today we saw a Ukrainian Tachka ballistic missile slam into a Russian supply depot here and destroy it. This is the third supply depot of the day that we've seen destroyed, and I couldn't be more proud of the Ukrainians because I think today has been the largest loss of supplies that the Russians have endured since the start of this war, just by supply depots destroyed alone. We're actually going to pop over to Twitter real quick to watch this video. And here it is. This is the video of the Tachka impact that the Ukrainians made in this village.
Смотри, Валерий Геннадьевич, какая ракета была.
Когда Ира дежурит на смене, происходят чудные вещи.
Видели?
I love how the guy points out where the rocket hit, like we needed to know. But it's great to see that Tachka took out another supply depot, the third one of the day. And I know that the Russians have got to be seething. And what's interesting to me is that we haven't had a DDoS attack tonight. Fingers crossed and knock on wood, we don't have one. Y'all may actually know the song if you've ever watched Casablanca. Who's unhappy? We're unhappy. How unhappy? Very unhappy. Well, knock on wood. And then they knock on wood. Anyways, knock on wood, hopefully we don't have a DDoS attack, but we can see that the Ukrainians have been committing more attacks on Russian supplies than Black Friday shoppers on a Walmart, and so it's good to know that they will be running out of supplies very soon. With that, we're now going to start moving down to the Donetsk area and also the remainder of the southern front, the rest of the news from around the country and internationally. But before we get there, we're of course going to answer 3 questions from the chat, and after we answer those 3 questions, we're going to be rounding out the rest of the news for the night. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and we have now reached our second question segment, and first up, we have a $50 super chat from D. Shaw, who says, for brunch tomorrow, along with coffee for the Enforcer clan at Cracker Barrel.
Well, and thank you so much for the support. And also, I have to be honest. Reread that, Matthew, for me real quick, so that way I can make sure how to word this politely. So say that again.
So I kind of butchered it the first time because it's missing the "this is for brunch tomorrow." So here it goes. This is for brunch tomorrow, along with coffee for the Enforcer clan at Cracker Barrel.
Well, I thank you so much for the support, and that gave me enough time to figure out how to politely word this put down, because we are Southerners. You know, we're from Alabama, and a lot of people know us as, around the world as Southern hospitality, fried catfish, the whole 9 yards. And we're also known for some negative things, but we're not going to be covering that here. One thing we're known for, however, is Cracker Barrel, and a lot of people do enjoy to eat at Cracker Barrel, but I have to be honest with everyone, and I hate to say this, and I say this with the absolute sincerity of my heart and absolute disappointment, that I have never eaten at a Cracker Barrel. So I hate to say that, y'all. We will try one out. Now that you've given us that bit of support, I think we will actually use that to go get some coffee and some brunch at Cracker Barrel, but I've never had it. And so if y'all would love to tell me, is it good or not? Because I know it's got to be good. A lot of people love eating there. But I hate to say it, I've never eaten there. We've eaten at all kinds of Southern restaurants. There's actually a lot of them that aren't big, like chain restaurants that we've eaten at, like mom and pop shops. And I really enjoy those. But just never eaten at Cracker Barrel. But I do thank you very much for the support. Sorry for the put down there. I know that it's almost like basic Southernisms to eat at a Cracker Barrel, but I've just never eaten there. But with that, I hope that does answer the question, and I thank you so much for the support once again. We are going to try out Cracker Barrel now. And with that, I thank you once again, and we're going to move on to the next question.
All right, and next up, we have a $50 super chat from Susan G, who says, I love your intros and closing music and videos. How did you come up with it?
We came up with it because a viewer sent the idea around day 60 or day 70. He said, hey man, like what would be a great idea is if you had elevator weight room music at the beginning of your stream. And I was like, wow, that's a really good idea. And so of course it took me like 2 weeks to get around to it, because it's really hard to like fit things in. Like the past 2 days have been really busy for me, both with college, real life, and the streams. So it's been hard for me to even change out the music now. But that idea came up, and I was like, that is a wonderful idea, instead of just throwing up a stream starting soon card. And so I went on to my video editor, pumped out a little thumbnail thing kind of on Canva, and then put down a timer on it so that way people would know how long it was until the stream started. And then I threw in a whole bunch of Ukrainian copyright-free music. And then I did something that I always like, which is Morse code. I don't know how to read it, but I think it's really cool. And so I went and typed up a message. I actually have a Morse code translator that I can type messages into, get the Morse code itself, and then download it and throw it into the video editor. And so I put that in there. And then we ran our first wait music for the, I guess you could say, first time. And so it was a huge success. People loved it. I love it. And I actually listen to it while we're counting down. I don't know if Matthew knows that, but I actually turn on my own video and listen to the music because I like it. That's why it's that music, because I like it. And so that's kind of the answer to that one. If you're talking about the Ukrainian anthem music, we actually had that around day 14. It's been around for a very long while. It is the best, most patriotic Ukrainian anthem video I was ever able to find, and it was also the most patriotic rendition of the anthem that I had ever heard. And so I was completely blown away by it, and I've been using that for almost 110 days. I'm a huge fan of that anthem, and I know that everyone's pretty much gotten used to the intro at this point, and I have to say it's the coolest one yet. So I hope that answers it in both ways, and I thank you so much for the support, and I hope that did answer the question really well about the music and stuff. And so with that, we're going to move on to the last question of this section, and then we're going to be moving on to the remainder of the news in the Southern Front, around the world, and then the speech from Zelensky.
And the last question of this segment goes to Sylvester the Cat, who puts in a $25 donation and says, I don't always say something, but I've been with you every single night from the beginning. Your grandmother should be very proud of you and Matt. Lee Spring Tanker, Sylvester the Cat thinks you are both the best. And Sylvester the Cat, we think you're the best as well. And we thank you for watching for such a long time and sticking with us.
And Matthew couldn't have said it better. I think that you've been one of our best viewers as well, Sylvester. And I thank you so much for the support once again. And also, I thank you so much for the kind words about my grandmother. My grandmother is an incredibly sweet person. And we actually were upstairs talking to her before the streams. We're actually streaming in the basement, just for those of y'all who don't know. But we were actually upstairs with her. And of course, she was sitting there, oh, you know, y'all are just so handsome. Of course, none of y'all know that. Y'all have never seen me. But she's like, oh, you're so handsome. And the usual things that grandma say, but of course she was like, I'm so proud of you for running these streams and really getting far, because my whole entire family knows me, and they call me the encyclopedia, because I'm able to throw off facts about anything and everything that you're ever able to talk about. You could talk about salami, and I have some kind of historical fact about salami. That's just how I grew up. That's who I am. So it's crazy to everyone in my family that I was able to take something that I've done, and everyone thought, he's going to grow out of it. He's got to go do something that everyone else does, like become a doctor or a lawyer or something. I almost have like Asian parents in that regard. But anyways, I'm sitting here doing this, and I'm incredibly happy with it, and everyone was shocked that it was really successful, and that somehow that little tick about me turned out to be my shining quality, really, in a way. And so I thank you so much for the support, and I thank you for saying some great things about my grandmother. Huge support to her. Of course, we gave her a shout out at the beginning, and someone just came up with something that I love. Lisa Clausen just said Grand Forcer. What do you think about that, Matthew?
Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty good. And so with that, that addresses the question. Getting a pretty good laugh out of that one, Lisa. And I thank you once again for the support, Sylvester. And so with that, we have now answered the last question of this question segment. And we're now going to start moving on into the southern Donbass, and also the remainder of the news for the night. And so without further ado, let's get right into it. Starting off in Orliivka, we've seen a sight today that's a beautiful one to behold. Usually we see Russian helicopters and aircraft working in unison whenever we see a video like this, but today it was Ukrainian aircraft and Ukrainian helicopters that were working in unison to attack the Russians on the other side of the lines. And so here's the video, and I'm just going to let y'all watch it. It's really crazy to think that it's actually Su-24s and a Ukrainian helicopter working together. You see the Mi-8 right there, tilting up, firing off its rockets. Helicopter's now hitting the ground and going into the valley. We now see a second helicopter moving forward, a Ukrainian Mi-24. Really rare sight. It now fires off its rockets, Kind of got up there a little high and went up much higher than the Mi-8, but luckily it didn't get shot down, and it's now hitting the floor as well. We can now hear some more helicopters coming around. I'm not sure if it's the same ones doing a second run. Looks like an Mi-24. It may be a third helicopter. This now fired off its rockets as well. And we are greeted with that wonderful little swishing sound. It's now hitting the deck, and soon we'll hear the roar of Ukrainian aircraft. It's now flying off into the distance, literally on the trees. The only way that helicopters were really able to be used in this war.
Так это далеко, отсюда не видно.
When you see some flares being popped in the distance, there's little white streaks you're seeing right there, and that is the Ukrainian Su-24 that is roaring its way across the skies and wreaking havoc and fear into the Russian forces just out there in the distance.
Бля, он падает, что ли? Вот он. Это фронтовой бомбардировщик. Это не грачи.
Here comes the Su-24, and just look at it go. Impressive display by both the Ukrainian Air Force and the Ukrainian Army as they just hammered the Russians into oblivion with both that rocket barrage and the Su-24's attack. And so hopefully the Ukrainians in this area will have a little bit of a boost in morale seeing their Air Force still in flight, although there are still rumors circulating by the Russians that the Ukrainian Air Force has finally been destroyed, but they've been saying that they have finally been destroyed for about 4 months, ever since the start of this war. With that, we're now going to be moving down more south into the Donetsk region, where we've seen in the city of Donetsk itself, some DPR mothers are in shock as they found out that their government doesn't actually care for them or their kids. So, here's the video, and while we get to it, I've got to read the caption here real quick to make sure I can get the story clear real quick. So, apparently there are graduates of the Academy of the Ministry of Internal Affairs here, without documents, and they're going to be taken to the front because of that, because of their lack of documentation, I suppose, based off of the caption. And these mothers here are in absolute riot nearly about this fact. And when I say riot, the eastern form of rioting is usually a lot more light than what you would imagine in the West. The eastern form of rioting is what we would call a polite protest in the West, but still, for an eastern country such as the DPR or LPR or Russia, this is a massive stand against the government that they're taking. And so here's the video.
Я снимаю. Я все снимаю. Убери руки.
Меня бросили. Это я
сниму. Он на ребенка? Да ты что на ребенка? Так на твоего могут сделать. Ты что, скотина, себе в голову?
See a little bit of a ruckus going on there, and this isn't the first time that we've seen this. We've seen this many times throughout the war, and it keeps on showing that the DPR shows absolutely no idea or even I guess you could say a facade of respect for their own citizens. They just treat them like dogs. And we can see that happening here again. And when you see these mothers finding out that they are on the wrong side of this war, most likely. With that, we're now going to be moving out of the Donetsk region entirely. We have not really gotten a lot of frontline reports over the past few days, not a lot at all, and it appears that the Donetsk area has once again fallen into a stalemate, as the Maginot Line has practically reformed on both sides, and no one is going to be making any ground against that kind of defense. With that, we're now going to be moving further down the front, and we finally got one piece of news from the Zaporizhia front line, and it's not even really today's news. It's a compilation of some videos from today and also videos from the past, but it does show the Azov battalion, which is currently fighting on the southern line, in action. So with that, here's the video. Let's get this thing up, and here we have it. I'm going to see if it has any music. It does. And it's Friends, of all things. I would describe it, but the footage is blowing by so quickly, it's really hard to try and describe. Oh, wait a minute. What was this? So, I guess one of the Azov soldiers... I guess they found a wheelchair, or maybe the guy is wheelchair bound, but they're rolling him out to the front lines with a gun. Of course, I think that's a joke. That's got to be a joke. But crazy at that. That actually gave me whiplash, like physically. That's the end of the video, but it is wonderful to know that the Azov battalion is still down there and still holding the lines. And it looks like they've been having a pretty good bit of fun. Lots of jokes were shown there. And it also looks like they're pretty serious when they have to get down to business. Wonderful to know that they're doing well in all regards. And with that, that's all the news we have from the Southern Front. Once again, no activity to speak of, and it's largely been quiet down here since the past month. With that, we're now going to be moving on towards the Kherson area, where we've had two bits of news today showing that the Ukrainians still appear to be pushing an offensive. Starting off, we've seen the Russians getting hit with Ukrainian artillery in this video from the Kherson Finger. We got some music. Hope y'all enjoyed the 3 seconds there, because that's not going to be going on any longer. And the Ukrainian artillery is coming on down. Boom shakalaka. Looks like it hit dead on to some more Russian forces, and we can already see some burned out vehicles all around the area that looks like they were hit prior. So this may be the second or the third time that Russian forces have come to camp in the same spot. Also, I encourage everyone to feel free to have some conversations. Like ask all the questions you would like. We would love to have a large pool of questions to answer. And also, it's just cool, of course, to conversate amongst the Lee Spring Army members. So make sure to take advantage of the wonderful opportunity that you have in the live chat, because there are a lot of great people in there. And they also have a lot of good points, facts, and opinions. And of course, it's always cool to have a little discussion here and there. We see the Ukrainians dropping some bomblets on some Russian vehicles, and it looks like the Russians just aren't having a good day. You now see another bomblet being dropped onto a supply truck. And boom goes the dynamite. Not really a lot of luck for the Russians there, is there? Well, that's the end of the video, but great to see that the Ukrainians are still giving the Russians hell, regardless of what they're doing. Of course, we know that the counterattack is still ongoing in this area, and that may be attached to that counterattack. Moving on down towards the Kherson area, we've seen the 24th Brigade also taking a shot at the Russians and obliterating a couple of them today at a blockade. And I would have to say, if they're calling this a blockade, the Russians are in some desperate times. Oh, that sounded like classic music for a second. But you see the drone dropping a bomblet, and it's whizzing its way down to the left side of the street, closer to the bottom of the screen. The bomb dropped, and it looks like it got a Russian soldier pretty good. That soldier got seriously wounded to protect a large pile of wood on the road that the Russians have the audacity to call a blockade. Very sad, honestly. I've got to admit, I don't feel sympathy for a lot of Russians, but for this guy to have potentially died over a stack of wood in the street, that's kind of sad, and it shows the state that the Russians are in. Beyond that, we don't really have a lot of news from the Kherson area, not really a lot of evidence to show that there are large infantry pushes going on, but hopefully we will get some news on that soon. With that, we're now going to move out to sea, to the news that everyone's been looking forward to and waiting for tonight. We have seen the Russians now bomb Snake Island. They left it yesterday, and now they've come back to bomb it again. The reason why is because in their hasty withdrawal from the island, that was supposed to be a sign of goodwill, because they're under absolutely no pressure at all from the Ukrainian military, that's for certain. They left millions of dollars of equipment on the island. They pretty much only saved the soldiers that were there. And so now the Russian Air Force has had to go by today and start a cleanup operation to bomb the island and destroy the Russian equipment that was left there. And we can see that happening here on this video. We can also see a testament of Russian accuracy as this plane is flying right over the island, low altitude, drops the bombs, and one of them completely misses the island, skirts over the land, and blows up in the sea below. You see the first explosion here on land, and the second explosion at sea. Pitiful. We can see the third bomb also explode further down the island. Kind of a little stupid, honestly, isn't it? They're under no pressure at all, according to their own government. But if they weren't under pressure, then why didn't they take the time to take this equipment off the island instead of having to try and destroy it in afterwards? And the answer is because the Snake Island had become so deadly for Russian soldiers that they didn't have time or the safety to be able to load these vehicles onto a supply craft and then cart them away from the island. If they had tried to spend that amount of time doing that, those soldiers that were trying to leave would have been killed and the equipment would have been lost anyways. And that's what we just saw right there. And that does let us know that the Ukrainian story of the Russians having to withdraw from this island because of a heavy Ukrainian artillery attack had to have been true. Otherwise, the Russians wouldn't have to be going over the island and mopping up the equipment that they left over. With that, we're now going to be moving on out of the entirety of Ukraine. And we're now going to be moving our way over to the United States. But before we get there, we've got a pit stop in Germany. My mind was blown today. Seriously, literally, blown through completely. I saw some news today that floored me. Y'all aren't going to believe this. I'm just going to read it to y'all word for word. This German general in this interview says, Ukrainian crews of the Panzerhaubitze 2000 use virtual reality headsets for troubleshooting and for guided remote maintenance with German technicians if needed. What? They sent the Panzerhaubitze over to Ukraine with the VR headsets, and whenever the Ukrainians run into a problem and they're like, oh man, I forgot my training, they whip on a VR headset in the tank and are immediately connected with a BMW representative. Of course, I'm joking about that part. And then the BMW representative guides them through how to use the Panzerhaubitze. This is insane. I've never heard anything like this. This is literally modern tech in action. I think, honestly, this may cut down on training times a large amount. And you may start seeing Panzerhaubitze tech support popping up in countries all around the world. I have never heard of anything like this. And this is the hugest advance in terms of technology that I've ever heard being implemented like this. I'm blown away, and I've got to give huge credit to the Germans. They haven't given hardly any support so far, except for these Panzerhaubitzes, some helmets and firearms. But golly, do they go the full 9 yards when they give anything. I've never seen any country do this yet. They're the first ones to do this as far as I know. And this is really putting modern technology through its paces to see what it's capable of. And I've got to say, the Germans have delivered. Usually, if you ever get anything German in real life here in the United States, like a BMW, you usually find out that a BMW's got more problems than your normal GMC. But man, oh man, is this impressive. Never before would I believe that you could literally put on a VR headset and get Panzerhaubitze tech support on the line. But the Germans are proving that they are going to go above and beyond with support they give to make sure that it is top notch. So massive support to the Germans for doing this, and this gives me a whole new level of respect for what they call German precision. With that, we're now going to be moving out of Germany, and we're now going to be moving overseas to the United States, where you have seen a letter being released from the Secretary of Defense. I'm sorry if I ever call that the Secretary of War. For some reason, I still call it that. Not that I was alive when it was called the Secretary of War, but we can see that a letter was sent out by Lloyd Austin today, the Secretary of Defense, showing that more support is on the way. For immediate release, and we're just going to read the letter out, the President drawdown authorization is the 14th drawdown of equipment from the Department of Defense inventories for Ukraine. that the current government has authorized since August 2021. Capabilities in this package include additional ammunition for high mobility artillery rocket systems, the Himars. Under USAI, the DoD will provide Ukraine with critical capabilities to defend against Russian aggression. Included in this package are 2 National Advanced Surface-to-Air Missile Systems, also called the NASAMS, which we covered last night on stream, up to 150,000 rounds of 155 artillery ammunition, and 4 additional counter-artillery radars. Notice that last bit right there. What's my computer doing? Notice that last bit right there. Right here where I'm circling with my mouse cursor. 4 additional counter-artillery radars. This is what a lot of people said the M777s weren't sent over with in the onset of the war, and now we're seeing that they are getting them as the war progresses. Not a lot of them, there's only 4 of them, but still, 4 is better than nothing. And so we do see that the US is sending over a decent amount of counter-artillery radars, but golly, 150,000 rounds of 155mm artillery ammunition is a lot. If we were to say, let's actually pull this up. What is the barrel life on an M777? The barrel is designed for 2,650 firings, and so after that, the barrel is worn out, and then they have to replace it. And so with a single barrel of an M777, 150,000 divided by 2,650, and this means that this will be able to, the 150,000 rounds of 155mm ammo will be able to provide 57 M777s with their lifespan of ammunition. That means that these M777s, 57 of them, will be able to continue to fire until their barrels are worn out. That is a massive amount of ammunition. And that is pretty much going to be providing nearly 50% of the M777s in Ukraine with enough ammunition to keep on firing until they can't fire any longer. A great addition of support to Ukraine. We've also seen 2 NASAMS being sent over. I would say that this is about the closest so far that the Ukrainians are going to be getting to a Patriot or an Iron Dome defense system. And so hopefully these things are up to snuff. We know that they have a pretty close range, but we don't know anything beyond that. Finally, we see that more Himars are being sent over, and I'm finally calling them Himars instead of Himars, because I've seen a lot of people saying it's pronounced that way, and I'm going to give on that one and pronounce it as Himars. But we've seen an additional ammunition. It doesn't give a number, but it is good to know that the Himars that are in Ukraine will be able to continue to function. And so, of course, massive credit to my home country, the United States, for continuing to provide support to Ukraine, and it's good to know that Ukraine has an ally in the United States in terms of support. In this sense, historically, I feel like the U.S. has become to Ukraine what France was to the United States in the Revolutionary War. So with that was, of course, wonderful news to cover. It's good to know that more support is on the way, and with that, we're now going to move back to Ukraine and in full circle to Kyiv, where we're now going to cover the speech from President Zelensky. After this, just for everyone to know, we will be moving into the question segment. It will not be the end of the stream for the night. The question segment will continue, and if you have thrown in a question in the live chat, you may get it answered. We try and answer as many as possible. With that, here's a speech from President Zelensky.
Українці, українки. В Одеській області продовжується розбір завалів після російського ракетного удару по Сергіївці. 3 ракети по звичайному житловому будинку, по 9-поверхівці, в якій ніхто не ховав ніяку зброю, ніяку військову техніку, ніякі боєприпаси. Як завжди розповідають про такі удари російські пропагандисти і посадовці. Це був простий будинок, 160 людей близько, і у ньому проживали звичайні люди, цивільні. Зруйнована цим ударом також і база відпочинку, абсолютно типовий для приморської території. Я наголошую, це свідомий, цілеспрямований російський терор, а не якісь там помилки чи випадкове влучання ракет. Вбиті 4 людини з однієї родини. Убитий хлопець 12 років звали Дмитро. А цей час всього у списку загиблих 21 людина, близько 40 поранені. Цифри змінювались і змінюються. Увесь день, на жаль, кількість загиблих зростає. Одночасно з ракетами по Сергіївці були запущені ракети по Затоці. Одразу 12 ракет вдарили по Миколаєву, по різних об'єктах у місті. Лише за одну ніч і ранок. Мої співчуття всім рідним, всім близьким, чиї життя були забрані такими ударами. Я особливо вдячний сьогодні Сполученим Штатам Америки, особисто Байдену, за оголошений саме сьогодні новий пакет підтримки для України, який включає дуже потужні системи НАСАМС, зенітний ракетний комплекс, який суттєво посилить нашу протиповітряну оборону. Ми багато працювали заради такого постачання. Загалом цей пакет важить $820 мільйонів, і окрім НАСАМС містить також боєприпаси для артилерії та радари. Не менш активно домовляємось і про іншу нову зброю від партнерів для Донбасу, для Харківської області, для півдня України. Це потрібно. Робимо все, щоб зламати перевагу окупантів. Сьогодні з візитом у Київ був прем'єр-міністр Норвегії. Обговорили з ним подальшу оборонну підтримку України, посилення санкцій проти Росії. Норвегія вже надала нам вагому підтримку, але буде ще додатковий пакет обсягом 1 мільярд євро. Дуже дякуємо, не забудемо. Сформували спеціальну групу з питань міжнародних безпекових гарантій для України. Групу очолить Андерс Расмусен, екс-генсек НАТО. Він сьогодні прибув в Київ. Керівник мого офісу Андрій Єрмак також буде з ним працювати. До складу групи увійшли впливові діячі з різних демократичних країн світу: Австралії, США, Швеції, Великої Британії, Німеччини, Польщі, Франції, Італії і, звичайно, України. Головне завдання групи – розробити формат безпекових гарантій для нашої держави, які працюватимуть довгостроково і реально, щоб не було жодних майбутніх агресій. Збільшуємо зовнішньополітичні зв'язки України з Латинською Америкою, провів переговори з лідерами Аргентини і Чилі. Інтереси України будуть представлені всюди у світі. Попри війну, попри всі загрози, ми не припиняємо наш рух до Євросоюзу. Сьогодні в Верховній Раді я підписав разом зі спікером та нашим прем'єр-міністром заяву щодо європейської інтеграції. Ми зафіксували цим документом, що починаємо рухатись від статусу кандидата до повноправного членства. Я вдячний пані президентці Європейської комісії Урсулі фон дер Ляєн, яка сьогодні у своєму зверненні до Верховної Ради висловила чітку підтримку України. Ми не будемо втрачати час. Я вірю, що Україна зможе так само енергійно здобути членство, як ми здобули кандидатство. Я вдячний усім, хто допомагає сьогодні нашій державі. Вдячний усім, хто захищає нашу державу. Слава Україні!
And with that, that is the end of President Zelensky's speech for the night. And with that, that is the conclusion of our news for the night as well. If you are here for the news alone, I do thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have enjoyed this news segment. We'll now be moving on into the question segment, so if you have any questions you would like to ask, and also if you've thrown down a super chat, we'll make sure to recognize every single person who has helped to support this channel and keep us running, and we'll also try and answer as many live chat questions as well. But for now, this is the end of the news. So if that's all you were looking for tonight, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, because these streams run every day of the week except for Mondays. And we also upload daily summaries, which show some of the highlight clips from the day's news. And so with that, thank you all once again, and we're now going to move into the question segment. But before we do, Matthew, I was wanting to ask you about that poll we threw up last night. Were a lot of people in support of playing a game or running a quiz when we ran that poll?
I can't remember for certain, but I think many people were in favor of the quizzes, but I can't remember for certain.
Could we run that poll one more time just to make certain, so that way we're not doing anything wrong?
All right.
Got you, thank you. And after you do that, we'll then move on to our first question. But while you do that, I'm also going to pull up some quizzes. History quizzes World War II. Everyone knows about World War II. Let's see. Fact or fiction? Oh, no.
All right, and that poll is now up, so everybody should be able to see that one. And let's see here. just a moment while I get something organized. I gotta get that poll out of the way. For some reason, it doesn't let me take it out of the way immediately until I answer it. So there it went. So Enforcer, I am ready when you are to start jumping into those super chats.
All right, and with that, let's get on to that first question.
All right, and up first, we have a super chat from Phil Tatham, who says, "Score for you boys and Granny."
Well, I thank you so much for the support, and also score for Granny as well. I actually called my grandmother Nanny, just for those of y'all who want to know what I call them: grandmother, granny, grand nanny. I call her Nanny. But I do thank you so much for the support and score. And so with that, thank you so much for the support, man. Of course, my grandmother is the best of the best, the heavyweight world champion. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
All right, and up next, we have a super chat from Ryan Hughes, who puts in a $20 super chat and says, "It seems like the unguided rockets from the helicopters are hardly worth the risk of losing a helicopter. Am I crazy, or does this make sense?" And first off, thank you, Ryan, for the support, and it's good to see you once again. I think you went on hiatus there for a while, so it's good to have you back.
And it is incredible to have you back. And also, to answer that question, it does seem like a massive loss to use helicopters to just fire unguided rockets, but there is a shining quality in them. That quality is that you don't actually have to see your target to shoot at it. You can just tilt the helicopter up and fire those things and let them fly, and they will probably hit whatever they're aiming for, but very few of them will. It'll be very inaccurate. However, if you were to use more expensive weapon systems like a guided missile, you're going to have to be able to see the target to be able to hit it, and that's the problem. You're putting the helicopter at more risk firing a more expensive and more worthwhile weapon than you would with a cheaper and less useful unguided rocket. And so that's why you've seen almost exclusively both sides using unguided rockets whenever they use helicopters, because while it seems counterintuitive, it is prolonging the life of those helicopters, and it is keeping them much more safe. So with that, I hope that does answer the question. I know it does seem asinine when you look at it from just the normal standpoint. I'm also wondering why they do not use guided missiles as well. But when you think about it in the perspective of trying to keep the helicopter surviving as long as possible, then it starts to make sense. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question, and I thank you once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one. And just in case if I sound a little off, I actually have a really big headache right now. And so if you could give me just a second, Matthew, I'm actually going to get a water and try and like shoot that down real quick, and then we'll move on to the next question. So give me just a second.
All right. And just so everybody knows, the Enforcer's actually heading over to his closet in his office where we keep a whole bunch of water. I don't know why, because it's not refrigerated or anything. But he should be back momentarily. He's like 2 feet away from his desk.
And I'm back.
And there he is.
Yeah,
that was a quick trip to the closet there.
Just like clockwork, have to pull out a water. And some Paul Plonsky says Advil, and I do agree. But the problem is that the Advil is all the way across the house, and that would take way too much time, and I don't want to keep y'all waiting too long. And so with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And I saw NOYDB say it's dehydration. And between the coffee, the cold brew that we have, which is pretty strong, and just staying on this thing for quite some time, I guess it does get to us occasionally, but nonetheless, we persevere because that's the way we do it here at the Enforcer channel. So, up next, we have a $20 super chat from Lisa, who says, "Thank you, Matt and Enforcer. We all appreciate the work you put in, and hi, Grandma." And Grandma, if she were here, would say hi back to you, Lisa, and thank you for your support.
And I thank you so much for the support as well, Lisa. And also, I thank everyone so much for having wonderful sentiments about my grandmother. Matthew actually said, "Oh, no, don't say anything about her. That could go bad. People might start bullying her." But actually, it went very well, and I was very glad to see that, like always, everyone in this stream is very nice and kind to everyone, including my grandmother. And so I'm very glad to see that, and I hope she enjoyed the shout out as well. I haven't gotten a response from them. I've actually been checking my phone for text messages, and I haven't seen them recognize whether they got the shout out or not. So I'm about to ask them here real quick. But with that, I hope that does address your comment, and I thank you once again for the support. And with that, we're going to move on to the next one. And real quick before we do, we're actually going to get rid of JJ here because I know he's causing a lot of stir down there in the live chat, and it looks like now he's just going off and trying to attack people. So he's gone, and with that, we're going to move on to the next one.
Yeah, tonight I haven't noticed a lot of bots in the chat, but I have noticed a couple of people that are getting very anxious tonight. I don't know if they're upset because it's the 4th of July weekend, they're not going anywhere or not. But I mean, don't feel bad, folks. We're here at our house too. We're not going anywhere either. So on to our next super chat. We have one from David Bacco, who puts in a $20 super chat and says, "Love what you guys do. You are awesome." This is for the coffee and the A in
you cut out.
Bacco is pronounced like A-O, like taco, and Slava Ukraine.
And I thank you so much for the support, and I thank you for making Matthew do all of that. He actually cut out a little bit. I don't know if you heard me say that.
Try to tone it down the second time.
We heard more of it. We heard you get the yeehaw, and then it cut out right there. But I thank you so much for the support once again. And also, really honestly, I was completely distracted as well by listening to Matthew go yeehaw. And I know a lot of people think he does it better than me, and that is something I will agree. He does it a lot better than me, is the yeehaws. But I thank you so much once again for the support, and I hope you continue to enjoy this channel. And I also saw, wait a minute, what was this? Oh, Matthew got rid of another one. Matthew's like an executioner. I just every once in a while I see him put one down. I'm like, oh. But with that, I thank you so much for the support. I hope that does address the comment. And with that, we're going to move on to the next one.
And yes, I did just get another one. And tonight's one of those strange nights where I'm multitasking like I am right now. I'm doing like 5 different things at once, but for some reason my mind is like 2 steps behind tonight. So sorry if I'm catching the bots a little bit late, but my mind is a little bit behind for whatever reason. I have no idea why, because I had a whole cup of cold brew just a minute ago, so apparently it's just one of those nights. But moving on to our next super chat, we have a $20 donation from Tito McLovin, who says, "Nobody talks about this, but the Danube River is a main waterway that connects the Black Sea with the North Sea via the Rhine-Main-Danube Canal. 2 Ukrainian cities are on the Danube. Snake Island protects the Danube Delta."
Are you sure the 2 Ukrainian cities are... Oh, wait, yeah, you're right. You're right. It's Izmail and I believe Kilya, because here's the Danube right here. So yes, yes, that is true. I was about to be like, wait a minute, are you sure that's true? But it is. So I thank you so much for the support and also giving us that little tidbit. And that is true. We actually covered that last night. And our conclusion is the Danube River a viable route for grain to travel to around the world? It could be, but then again, with everything, if all of the grain was to be shipped down one single avenue, it's going to become overcrowded and it's not going to be functionable. And so they can use the Danube, but I believe they should also use that in a combination with Romanian ports and also Polish ports as well. So that way there's many different hubs that can take down the overall traffic on a single one. Because if you have 100 cars and you have one road for them to all go down, 100 cars are going to be on that road. But if you have 100 cars and 3 roads, you're going to have about 33 cars on each one. The traffic will be less. So it is a good idea. I think that's a wonderful one. We did cover it last night, but once again, everything has to be done in moderation, and so I believe it should just be used as another alternative to try and get the grain out of the country and elsewhere. Also used in unison with Romanian and Bulgarian ports, as well as Polish ports. And so with that, I hope that does address the comment, and I thank you so much once again for the support and also covering the story about the Danube. Just in case y'all didn't know, as far as we know, the longest bridge in the world was built by the Romans over the Danube, and it stretched an entire mile long. There's nothing that exists of that bridge to this day, except for the carvings in the rock facings on the sides of the river that show the beginning and the end of the bridge. An impressive feat by the Romans again. The Romans were really ahead of their time in civil engineering, and it would take, golly, like, honestly, in terms of civil infrastructure, it would take nearly 1,800 years, or 1,600 years, really, for the world to get back up to what Roman infrastructure and Roman civil engineering used to be. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question, and I thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, I'm actually going to continue the quiz. I just forgot about that, but with that, we're on to the next question.
And I also want to clear something up real quick. I have a feeling I'm probably mispronouncing it, but please let me know in the chat. I just saw Scott Mensing say, "Isn't it Danube?" I'm not sure how to really say it, so somebody please correct me in the chat if I am wrong so I can correctly pronounce that, because I feel like I am probably saying it wrong for some reason. But let's see here. On the poll, I just want to quickly address that. It looks like 66% of you say you are in favor of the quizzes, and only 34% of you say games. So I think I was correct on that earlier. I can't remember if I said quizzes or not. I think I said quizzes. Did I, Enforcer?
You did.
Okay, so we were right. So y'all are in favor of the quizzes, so the enforcer will keep doing those and hopefully getting a lot of questions right over there. I can't really see the screen.
Well, I actually just got one wrong. It was a misclick. It said something like the Soviet Union was a member of the Axis in World War II, and I was trying to put false, but they switched up the order that the buttons were in, and I clicked true, and so I got it wrong. But with that, I'm actually going to try and comment a little bit more on the quizzes, so that way everyone can enjoy those a little bit more. But with that, we're going to move on to the next question, and also, the Battle of Iwo Jima, as far as I know, it was the bloodiest, and I was correct. With that, we're on to the next question.
And I see a lot of you are saying Danube. So Danube, I'll have to remember that. I probably won't be able to remember it, but I'll give it a shot. So moving on to the next one, we have a $20 super chat from Sharon Tukolsky, who does not leave a comment. And thank you very much, Sharon, for your continued support of the channel, and thank you for watching. And up next, we have a $20 super chat from Ryan Hughes once again, who says, have you ever thought of doing a fundraiser to support your career as a news channel? If you had a specific game plan, I'm sure all of us would donate. Good news is, hard to come by these days, and we appreciate your insight.
And I thank you so much for the support. And we really do have a roadmap of the direction we're trying to go in with this. I'm trying to see if I can keep this going all the way through law school. I don't know if that will be possible, but that is something I would love to do. One, that allows me to do what I like the best, which is talk about history, current events, and such things like that. And second, it is. Well, really, there's no second point. I'm really just enjoying it, and so I really just enjoy it. So I would love to keep on doing this, and so we're going. Of course, this is just a universal truth. This war is not going to end. This war is not going to go on forever, and there's going to have to be something eventually that this channel moves on to. And so what I'm thinking about is moving on to history, current events, and general topics of interest, but they always have a current events kind of like current event spin on them or a historical spin on them. That's kind of the direction this channel is going to be going into. And so we're going to be covering, stuff like Browns Ferry, the Browns Ferry nuclear power plant. We're going to be covering the German power grid. We're going to be covering high-speed rail in the United States and high-speed rail around the world and what it means for the United States. Going to be covering things like SpaceX and its Starship program. And among other things, those are just the current events, side of things. But the historical side of things, of course, that could be anything. We could talk about the war in Ukraine in retrospect, and we could talk about some of the battles and how they unfolded once we get more information, and make really big videos about like the Battle of Severodonetsk, the Battle of Kharkiv and Kiev. I think there's a lot of places we can go. And just in case of y'all did not know, I have been looking at trying to operate a software that has been really interesting to me. I haven't seen a lot of people on Fiverr that are able to do it, but hopefully I can click on this. Okay, I can. It is called... Wait a minute. No. This would be the better one to go to, I believe. One second. We're actually going to close down everything, and then we're going to go to Adobe Creative Cloud. And I'm going to show y'all a little system that I've been looking at for a little bit, and I'm trying to figure out how to work it to add it into my videos. So we'll open up After Effects. Hopefully it opens up on the right screen. Come on. Open up on the right screen. I'm hoping it opens up on this one y'all are seeing instead of the second one. Oh, come on. I don't think it's going to open. I think it takes up too much CPU. So we're going to have to close that. Oh, it opened! Yes! Okay. So, new project. I'm going to show y'all what I've been trying to use. I'm trying to use this system called GeoLayers 3. G-Nom is watching. Who's G-Nom? Who's G-Mom? Oh, Grandma. I'm sorry. I thought that was someone else. But, anyways. So, you can use this thing here to make maps of the world. And it can get really in-depth. I'm still trying to figure it out and learn it. And I'm using the trial version right now just to figure out how it works. But, you can click... next, we're just going to go with the simple stuff so that way I can show y'all how it kind of works. So let me try and remember how to use this thing. Got it. So you can actually take like for instance, Ukraine. You can look at it and you can mess around with the map settings. Let me see if I can just... Oh, hopefully that doesn't finalize the whole thing. Okay, it finalized one frame. Great. So we can take this thing and we can enlarge it to where it covers the whole screen. Well, at least I thought we could. We'll zoom in on it instead. So you can see that it's a map system. And it can also zoom in, zoom out. You can create all kinds of cool animations. You can zoom in all the way to the city level. Let me see if I can do that here with Severodonetsk, if I can find it. Let's see, Severodonetsk should be right up here. And I was right. It's right here. So here's Severodonetsk and Lysychansk, and I'll finalize this frame for y'all real quick. And of course, you can make it look a whole lot cooler, and you can make it move around. And no, this is not free. I saw someone ask that. This is the trial license. I would have to actually pay a pretty decent amount of money to get this thing and actually use it. But you can move this thing around all over the place. And you can make all kinds of cool animations, have little markers pop up and stuff like that. And that's something that I'm thinking about incorporating into these future videos. But I'm just trying to figure out how to do this right now because it's kind of a little tough and it takes a little bit of learning. So with that, I hope that kind of answers the question about the vision that this channel's going into, at least in a little bit, and shows you a little bit of behind the scenes of what I've been trying to work with, because if I can get this to work, we can make videos that are really nice looking and really pretty, and that's what I want to do, is not just make them informative and informational and content, well, like information rich, but I also want them to be pleasing to the eye, and this is kind of like part of that process of doing that. But we're not going to save that project. We're going to shut that down and throw back up the quiz. So with that, I hope that answers the question, and with that, we're going to move on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $20 super chat from Walter A. Lakota Jr., who says, Aloha at Enforcer and Matt. On your day off from here, there is maybe a chance for both of you can get in touch with me about 11:30 a.m. Japan time. That's when I'm on my lunch break, and I can tell you more about Japan. And Walter, I will say that I do know a little bit about Japan, but probably not as much as you do. And I know it mainly because I watched James May, his little documentary, Our Man in Japan. And I will say this, James May makes, hands down, the best travel documentaries I've ever seen. Hands down.
I gotta agree with Matthew there. He makes the best. I mean, like, I watched it too with Matthew, and it was hilarious through and through, and very informational as well. I loved it when the guy wanted to go into the Cat Girl Cafe or whatever. And then James May was like, no, I'm not going in there. And the Japanese guy was like, why? And he's like, it's pervy. And it was just hilarious. Like, the whole thing was hilarious to me, but Matthew may actually quote that one a pretty good bit as a joke. But I thank you so much for the support, and maybe we will talk about Japan sometime. I think it's a really interesting place, and I love to hear about countries all around the world. But I just noticed this one. This was stupid, and this is why I got it wrong. This quiz question says, Panzer Division was an infantry division of the Nazi German army. That's wrong. The Panzer Division is a tank division. That's what Panzer means in German. It's part of the word Panzerkampfwagen, which means tank. So I don't know why they're calling it an infantry division. An infantry division would be something like a Schützen division, or just an infantry division. So I don't know why I was calling it an infantry division, but apparently I got that wrong. But with that, we're on to the next question, both on in the quiz and in our question segment.
All right. And up next, we have a $17 super chat from the Vladnator, who says, this is for some Nutella with your grits and a coffee or two. Slava Ukraine. Vladnator, I have to say, have you lost your mind?
Coffee with grits?
Nutella with grits.
Nutella with grits?
Now, I like Nutella, but not the grits part.
You've lost your mind, man. You've lost your mind. You're on thin ice, bud. You're on thin ice, man. You're going to commit crimes against grits like that. We're going to keep an eye on you, man. But I thank you very much for the support nonetheless. But ew. And with that, we're on to the next one. And also, this little quiz question right here says Auschwitz was Nazi Germany's first concentration camp. That's not true. It was Dachau. But with that, we're on to the next question.
All right. And up next, we have a $17 super chat from Sully Kanuk, who says Canada to give Ukraine 39 light armored personnel carriers, LAV-2 ACSV. It's published today. Happy Canada Day.
Also, happy Canada Day, too. I forgot that it's Canada Day, which is Canada's version of the 4th of July. So I hope y'all been having a fun day up there in Canada. And also a great way for them to celebrate Canada Day by sending Ukraine a couple of more armored personnel carriers. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, and I hope you have enjoyed that wonderful Canada Day up there. I know that the French, everyone has kind of like a national day in their country. For Britain, it's Guy Fawkes Day, which is kind of weird because that guy tried to blow up the government over there. The French have Bastille Day. The United States has the 4th of July, of course. Canada has, let me think, what? Canada Day. I think Germany doesn't really have a day. They're kind of a weird country with how their culture is developed after World War II, but you know, the Russians, of course, have Victory Day, which is kind of what they identify with their country now, or May Day, but May Day isn't as big as it used to be. It used to be big during communist times, but not really. And then the Ukrainians also have Ukrainian Independence Day, which is something that they've celebrated pretty recently. But with that, thank you so much for the support. I hope that does address the question, and with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a $17 super chat from Tinkers, who says, "Good day from Australia. How much Russian artillery and ammo can be used by Ukraine?"
A pretty decent amount. A lot of the artillery, a lot of the artillery and ammo, although the Ukrainians have been getting a large amount of Western stuff, is really cross-compatible because the Ukrainians are still largely using Soviet-era artillery systems, and so in that regard, Russian and Ukrainian artillery is practically identical. And so you can use a Russian artillery piece with Ukrainian ammo, or you can use a Ukrainian artillery piece with Russian ammo. And so I hope that does answer the question in brief, and I thank you very much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next question. Also, another thing before we move on, Matthew, I was wanting to cover this one right here. This question said, Joseph Stalin was the premier of the Soviet Union during World War II. That is true. You can call Joseph Stalin the premier, but at the same time, it'd be more accurate to call him the general secretary, because that was his official position. He never really became the premier. He remained the secretary, which is a very weird little historical conundrum there, but I highly suggest y'all look into Joseph Stalin's rise to power, because he levied his position as the general secretary to pretty much screw with the government to the point he became the guy who was in charge. But with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
All right, and up next we have a $20 super chat from Uncle Tababite once again, and thank you very much for your continued support, Uncle Tababite. And he says, "Spam for the long weekend, Slava Ukraine."
Also, thank you so much for the spam and Slava Ukraini. And with that, we are on to the next question, and we will be enjoying that spam over the long weekend. Matthew just loves spam. And with that, we're on to the next question.
Can't say I like the stuff too much, but anyways, without getting too deep into that rabbit hole again, we're going to move on to our next super chat, which is from Ryan Hughes, who puts in a $20 donation and says, "Enforcer, I was saying that I think we should do a fundraiser specifically to support you. Ukrainian fundraisers are great, but without you, there would be no fundraiser. We need to get you off the ground."
Well, I thank you very much for the support and the idea, but I never want to give up a Ukrainian fundraiser and replace it with one that supports me. I feel like that's putting myself well above the Ukrainians, and that seems to be somewhat distasteful. I'm not the one who's being bombed and dying, and you know, in that regard, I would rather try and make sure that Sundays are always supporting Ukraine instead of me. And I have to recommend that if everyone does want to support me and make sure that we can keep this thing running and keep on growing, to just support us through the live chat. And that's one thing that a lot of people are like, well, you know, YouTube takes 30% of what we give, and that's true, but at the same time, everyone does have to consider that's kind of paying dues to be on here. And that's something that, while I'm not really a big fan of, I can understand, because I am speaking on their platform, and so they are kind of entitled to a percentage of it, because without this platform, a lot of y'all would have never found me. If for some reason I was on Twitch or a smaller contender, most of y'all as an audience would have never found these streams, and so I do understand why YouTube does get 30%. And so I highly recommend that if y'all want to support me, just support me through the normal weekdays. But when that Sunday comes around, help me blow through those fundraiser goals as we try and help out Ukraine. But with that, I understand where you're coming from. That was a very generous offer of you. And I thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we're on to the next question.
And up next, we have an $18 super chat from Junebugwood the 72 at the end, who says, "Hi."
Hi. I thought there was going to be a lot more to that. That's why I paused. But I thank you so much for the support. And hi. And with that, we're on to the next question.
All right. And up next, we have another $15 super chat from Uncle Tababite, who says, "Happy Friday, Maple Canada Day."
Hey, happy Friday. And also, happy Canada Day, eh? I know y'all don't say eh a lot. But y'all do have those little Canadian accents, eh? And I really like them a lot because y'all always come off as very polite and stuff whenever y'all do that. And so I want to thank you again for being the great northern neighbors that we always have. And I'm always very appreciative of every single one of you, eh? And so with that, thank you once again for the support, eh? And we're going to move on to the next question, eh? But thank you once again.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from George, New York's premier contractor, who says, Heil, my leaf spring army. It was nice to hear my native Georgian the other day. Missed a few streams, but I'm still a huge fan of the Enforcer. Thank you again and again for awesome streams.
Hey, that's no big deal. Everyone misses a stream every once in a while. As long as everyone's still having a good time listening to the news, I'm having a great time as well. Also, another thing that's crazy to me, and I can't say this, I don't know why, but tonight we had a peak viewership of 6,600 people. I don't know how we're able to have that many people come and watch our news, but I'm always incredibly honored that everyone does find this to be a great news channel, and everyone's always here to watch the news. I find it to be a high honor. I don't know why. A lot of people, I've seen a lot of explanations for it. Most people say it's just because I'm a very entertaining person to listen to, which is a high honor, but I never like to take too much praise for myself. I usually attribute it to our Sunday fundraisers, or maybe the up-to-date, like day-to-day news reports. I don't know how we do it, but I'm always appreciative that everyone does enjoy these streams like you, and I'm glad that you did come back, and I hope you had a good time on that little hiatus. You got to make sure to pronounce that correctly, but I hope you had a fun little time, and I welcome you back, and I hope you're here to stay. And so with that, thank you once again for the support. Thank you so much for enjoying this channel as well. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
All right, and up next we have a $10 super chat from Pete Hone, who says, that crab still has the new car smell.
It does. I was trying to think of what you were talking about. I was like, crab? And then I remember that there's the crab. But yes, it does. It looks so clean, and I'm honestly blown away. Also, we're moving off of this quiz because every single question that's correct, you just click on the left side box and you get it right. So that's not really a quiz. That's just repetition of muscle movements. But we're going to move on to another one, a history-related one, of course. But with that, politics. Oh, whoa! I was going to move on to that, but then I saw the word politics. But with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the question. And with that, we're going to move on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a $10 super chat from Michael Lysychansk, who says this war is similar to World War II, and that's why I support Ukraine.
It is very similar to World War II in some political motives, like Putin's overarching ambitions to conquer a large amount of land west of the country, so that way true Russian people can live in it. Well, that's something that we've heard before, and that was from Hitler. So I can agree 100%, and that's also why I support Ukraine, because this has a lot of the signs that World War II did, and just like then, the waters are as murky for some as it was back then. And I always find it funny, because people, by and large, whenever they look back at history, they like to perceive themselves as far more intelligent than the quote-unquote idiots that came before. And so many people in a history class, you know, these are the people who honestly have nothing going on inside their heads. They'll sit there and listen to something like, you know, how troops used to fight in lines, and they'll be like, oh, what idiot would fight in the line? You know, or they will sit there with World War II. Who would have let Hitler do such a thing? And then nowadays, a lot of these people are letting what's going on in China and Russia just keep on going on. And I know that we've never talked about China, but there are concentration camps in China right now that we know of where Uyghur people, which are the people who live in Western China, are being put in concentration camps and forced to either become true Chinese, which are the Han Chinese, or die in the process of never becoming one. And so, in that regard, we're pretty much watching the same thing that happened in Nazi Germany happen in China, and we're doing nothing about it. And then with Russia doing what it's doing in Ukraine, is pretty much like the United States did in World War II. We watch Germany invade Poland, and we go, oh, that's really kind of like their problem to deal with for a little bit. Of course, there's a huge change this time around. We're not being completely isolationist. We are giving a large amount of support to them. And so in that regard, it has changed. But still, I always find it so dumb when people these days sit here and say something about all of the people who came before and act like they're stupid, because the people they're talking about usually are still smarter than them. So with that, I hope that does address the comment, and I thank you once again for the support. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And moving on, we have a $10 super chat from David Prange, who does not leave a comment. And thank you very much, David, for your support of the channel. And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Super Creech, who says, Enforcer, what do you think is going to happen with Snake Island now? Enforcer Matt, how many bots do you shoot down a night? And great job, Enforcers, Slava Ukraine. And Super Creech, I will say that I don't have an exact number, but if I had to take a stab at it, I'd probably say I time out or remove at least 30 to 40 bots a night, I would say.
Well, with that answer, I'm going to try and answer the question about Snake Island. Snake Island is not going to be taken by the Ukrainians. I think they may take a boat out there and plant the Ukrainian flag back on the island, but there is no way for the Ukrainians to keep a standing force there. They don't have a navy to protect them, and anything that would be left on that island would pretty much wind up the way the Russians did. It would get attacked daily, and it would be pointless. So I think that by and large, Snake Island is just going to be abandoned from here on out throughout the rest of the war. So with that, I hope that does answer the question. It was a little bit brief, but that's really the best answer I can give. It's a short one on that, but I hope it does answer it. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question. Before we do, though, I found something funny here in this little question here. It said, which of these ships was sunk by a German submarine? Gave the Arizona, sunk in Pearl Harbor, the Lusitania, the correct answer, the Titanic, which was sunk by an iceberg, and the Andrea Doria, which was an Italian cruise ship that sank in the 50s off the U.S. coast after it ran into a much smaller Swedish cruise ship that's still in service to this day. It's under a different name. It's changed names multiple times, but that ship is like 130 years old and it's still around, which is a crazy story. But with that, we're going to move on to the next question. Just wanted to share that with you because I thought Andrea Doria as an answer was pretty funny.
All right, and up next, we have a $10 super chat from Hoodoo, Texas, who says, try the dumplings at Cracker Barrel and the fried apples, of course. Add on the turnip greens and cornbread, and then you have a feast.
Well, I thank you very much for the support, Hoodoo, Texas, and we will make sure to check out those dumplings at Cracker Barrel. Now, I gotta say, my mom makes the best chicken and dumplings there are around the world. I'm gonna give her the credit and go up to bat for her. The chicken and dumplings my mom makes, along with the chicken and rice, is just to die for. I love it. I wish she'd make it more, but it's delicious. So with that, I hope that addresses the comment in a way, but we will go to Cracker Barrels and see if it's up to snuff or not. So with that, I hope that does address the question, and we're on to the next one. And also, thank you once again, Hoodoo, for being a longtime viewer of this channel.
Yes, and indeed. And up next, we have a $17 donation from James Nyland, who says, hi, Enforcers. Would you consider getting a P.O. box so people could send you interesting stuff?
I have thought about making a P.O. box, but while people could send me interesting stuff, I'm scared if I got a P.O. box, the Russians would send me Novichok, or someone would send me a bomb, or the Unabomber would make it out of prison and he'd make a bomb for me. And so, while I would love to do that, I by and large am kind of worried that someone would send something very questionable to that P.O. box, and I would get blasted from it, literally. But with that, I hope that does address the comment. I would love to get fan mail from a lot of my fans, but at the same time, I'm kind of scared that there are lunatics out there. And while I always like to have a idea that most people are good in the world, and a lot of people are out there trying to do the best they can in helping out each other, the crazy people, while very few and far in between, are crazy. And and a lot of people have already given us death threats. And while I think most of them are cowards and will never actually follow up on them, I know that them being cowards, a P.O. box would allow them an opportunity to kill me indirectly, probably. So with that, I hope that does answer the question, and I thank you once again for the support. And with that, we're on to the next question.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from William Arrington, who says, keep up the great work.
Thank you so much once again for the support, and we will try and keep up the good work as best as possible. Now, I know that Ed A just said paranoia. I just did see that. And I know it sounds like paranoia until you've had someone email you your full name and also your home address. Now, that was when I looked at it and I was like, we can't have any of this stuff. I was like, that's kind of getting a little bit serious right there. So that's why I kind of take a step back a little bit with that, because just in case if there are crazy people out there, they do put in enough effort to make me think, well, maybe it'd be a good thing to carry around a pistol all the time. But with that, hope that does kind of address that little comment right there, and we're going to move on to the next question.
And yes, I have to agree with the enforcer on that one. Unfortunately, it's not paranoia, and it's actually the truth. So sadly, it is the truth. I wish it wasn't, but there are quite a few crazy people running around out there that would love to do bad things. So I definitely understand where the enforcer is coming from on that. And I just saw Packetang say that a honey badger would help. And yes, a honey badger would help. I'll take the animal and the gun. But yeah, maybe we could chain up a honey badger like right next to the PO box, and maybe that would prevent anything from happening.
Maybe since I do so many Mike Tyson impressions, maybe Mike Tyson could protect us. I don't know. I mean, I know he's not really into the bodyguard stuff, but at the same time, the guy's a slugger. So maybe we'll look into that. But I thank you once again for the good idea there. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
All right, and while I copy that super chat real quick here, just want to make sure I'm not missing anything, and it looks like I am good. So, up next here, we have a $10 super chat from JK, who says, Tylenol and bottled water fund. Great job, you guys, and don't mistake me for JJ. And yes, I remember when the enforcer did that, he called you JJ, and everybody got really upset in the chat about that. So, we'll remember, it's JK.
And I thank you for the support, JJ. I'm just playing, JK. I thank you once again for the support, and also I thank you for the Tylenol and water fund. Every once in a while, I do get dehydrated. I actually have some major issues when I get dehydrated. So I thank you very much for the water fund and also the Advil fund, because everyone needs an Advil every once in a while. So with that, I hope that does address the super chat, and I thank you once again for the support. And with that, we're on to the next question.
All right, and up next we have a $10 super chat from Vance Hicks, who says, thanks for y'all's efforts. I will be back on Sunday for sure.
Well, I thank you so much for the support. And also, I look forward to seeing you coming up this Sunday night for the Super Smackdown of the Century. But getting past that joke, it just flung through my head how the WWE always does that stuff. Honestly, I'm not a big fan of the WWE. But anyways, I thank you so much for the support, and I hope to see you on Sunday night, and I hope we blow past the fundraiser goal within the first hour. That's going to be our goal, everyone. I want to see the fundraiser goal passed within the first hour of the stream being up. So with that, I hope that does address the comment, and I thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on rolling. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from LG, who says, Enforcer, I've been watching since day 17, and I haven't missed one stream since then. I don't have much, but I'm glad to have enough to throw in a little something. Slava Ukraine.
Well, I thank you so much for the support, LG, and it's perfectly fine if you don't have anything to throw in. I think everyone hitting the like button and just being here and supporting this channel is a great thing in its own right. And I thank you just so much for the support and being a great viewer of this channel, and also enjoying the news we send out, because I'm glad that a lot of people have found our channel and stuck with it as their mainstay course of news each day. We are going to try and span out and cover more news. I'm just, like, when I say we're going to span out and cover more news, I'm seriously questioning whether we'll ever cover American politics at all. Because whenever I even glance near it, like whenever I just sit there and say the current administration is doing this, and you have these options here in the United States, there is a political firestorm that starts up in our live chat every single time, and it's so, the situation in American politics is so bad. I think even if we try to go in that direction in the future, it's just not good. I just don't see any good prospects there of keeping this channel nice and good. I feel like people would try and tack us to one group or the other, even if we went straight down the middle road. So I thank you very much once again for the support. We are going to try and continue to stretch out and expand into more news, but I think we might avoid the U.S. politics by and large. So with that, thank you once again, and any support helps us, and I'm very appreciative of the support you've given tonight. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a super chat from the Wuhan Institute of Virology, who puts in a $5 PEN, I'm not sure what that is, and says, what do you think that the leader of the DNI said the outlook of the war looks grim? And are you guys from the USA? Thank you.
Well, to answer the second part of the question first, we are born in the USA, as they say. That part is true. We're actually from Alabama. So go ahead and pull out your stereotypes for Alabama, because some of them are true. To to answer the first part of that question, the leader of the DNI said the outlook of the war looks grim. A lot of people have been saying that, and I've seen a lot of people on the news saying that the war is never going to end. To these people, I think they're stupid. The war has only been going on for 4.5 months. And in context of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, Iraq lasted around 10 years, Afghanistan 20. What the hell do they know about how long a long war lasts? This has hardly gone on the length of a war like Iraq or Afghanistan. And so in that instance, I just wish that people would stop saying silly stuff. On top of that, a lot of these people have been wrong. And I'm going to say that flat out. And I'm just going to give my honest opinion of most experts. Most experts don't have a clue what they're talking about. I hate to say that. It throws a wrench into like the modern, I guess you could call it. What do they call it, Matthew? It's the kind of
like the dogma.
The dogma, yeah. I'm kind of looking for that meritocracy. That's what I'm looking for. We're kind of in a meritocracy these days where we give these people supposed titles of experts, but they have no idea what they're talking about. And that's almost expanded into everything. Everyone's always saying, let the professionals talk about it. And then the professionals step forward and they have no idea what's going on. You know, the supposed professionals. Like the people in the Department of Defense that said that Ukraine would last only 3 days. It didn't, and it was completely wrong. It was wrong 100%. There was a lot of other things that they've said that have been wrong. There's a lot of things that many experts that have said that are wrong. And I'm gonna actually throw in a huge shock factor to everyone. But just because someone has a college degree does not mean they're intelligent. It means they were able to read a book and fill out questions in a quiz. Because I've been through college for I'm in my senior year now. I've only been in college for about 2 years, really. I'm probably going to round out college in about 2.5 years worth of time. But college all comes down to cracking open a book, reading it, understanding what you're reading, and then taking a quiz or a test on it. And so there, and I'm not gonna say this by and large. There are, of course, things that experts should be left for, like nuclear engineering, mechanical engineering, such things like that. Yes, there are experts in those fields because it requires factual technological knowledge. But in other fields, like the study of war and strategy, I mean, like, if that stuff was actually a science, then how come there are career generals that have been in the military for 30 years or their whole entire lives? Just as an example, during the French Revolution and the times afterwards of the French Republic, how come all of those generals that had 30 years of knowledge sucked at actually fighting wars, but a man like Napoleon, who had almost no practical experience, could become one of the greatest generals of his time? And that tells me that in a lot of areas, precedent-wise, there is no science to it, and there is no such thing as a professional. And that's why I don't understand why we say, you know, the professional says, based on his opinion, Ukraine should only last 3 days. What precedent is there to say that? What are they basing that off of? You know, because whenever I base my assessments of anything, I always usually give them a historical precedent, like a case law. But a lot of experts out there just say something, and they expect people to buy it based off of the weight of their title, which I don't believe. I believe that if you're an actual supposed expert, you should always have some kind of a precedent that you're basing it off of, or some kind of logic, instead of just saying it and acting like I'm a professional, so this is what it is. That's kind of what it is to me. And so I don't exactly know what the DNI is, to be honestly, but if they're saying that the outlook of the war is grim, I entirely disagree with it. The outlook of the war is pretty decent. It's only been going on for 4.5 months. This could stretch on for years. A lot of wars go on for years. And at this point in the war, we've seen the Russians have a major upset. They've been stalled. And if you're stalled this early in a war, look at World War I. Look at World War II. Once the Germans got actual pushback and got stalled, they lost. That happened for the Germans in World War II in North Africa, in Russia, and towards Britain, with the Battle of Britain. They got stalled, and they got completely stopped during the air battle, which stopped them from conducting Operation Sea Line. And in all three of those instances, once they got stopped, they lost the momentum, and they lost. In World War I, it was the exact same thing. The Schlieffen Plan bursted through the Ardennes forest straight to Paris. The French stopped them at the Battle of the Marne, also known as the Miracle on the Marne, and after that, they lost. It took some time, sure, in both wars, but they lost. We're looking at the same thing today. The Russians got the jump. they surprised the Ukrainians and covered a lot of ground. But once they got stopped seriously by the Ukrainian military, they have hardly won anything since. And while they win the occasional battle here and there, like taking Severodonetsk and Mariupol, by and large, they're not making a lot of progress. And that's what I base my assessments off of as a precedent. But then these people out here, they just base it off of nothing rather than their title. And so that's kind of what I'm saying. So I hope that answers the question, and I thank you very much for the support. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a $9 super chat from Duncan VR, who says, the Russian Z Sheep's platoon was on patrol. One Z Sheep called from his rear, "In Putin." The sheep called Mr. Putin, replied, "Bah." Slava Ukraine.
I don't know what the story means, but Slava Ukraini. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support, and also interesting story. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And I'm not sure what the story meant either, but I think he was just trying to get me to say bah. So there you go, Duncan. I did it in some form or another. It was pitiful, but there you go. Thank you for the support. And up next, we have an $8 super chat from Martin Van Own, who does not leave any comments. And thank you very much for your support, Martin. We appreciate you being a viewer, and we appreciate you watching our stream. And let's see here. Up next, we have an $8 super chat from Ryan Miller, who says, would the barrels in most of the Russian artillery be toast by now? Glory to the Leaf Spring Army, glory to Ukraine, and glory to the heroes. And happy Canada Day. It means a lot when seeing others at war.
And I thank you so much for the support, and also happy Canada Day as well. And to address the question about the artillery barrels being worn out, of course, I don't know if they have been or not. Of course, it's a case-by-case basis per artillery piece, but since the war's been going on for so long, and we've gotten a general number of something like, I believe, 6,000, 7,000 shells at minimum are fired at the Ukrainians per day by Russian artillery, that means that eventually a decent amount of artillery pieces are going to be reaching the end of their barrel life. And so in that instance, I would assume that some of them have run their course and have had to have been sent back to Russia or to some kind of a repair facility to have the barrels rebored or replaced. Of course, I don't have any exact information to go off of to answer that question, but by and large, just based off of the numbers, one would have to assume that some artillery pieces have been rebored. So with that, I hope that does answer the question, and I thank you once again for the support. Also, just to recap one other thing about the whole experience thing and the D&I question. When I say that a lot of things are about cracking open a book, I believe that someone should not be valued based off of their title. They should be based off of their knowledge. And so I don't really care, honestly, if you have a high school degree, a college degree, or if you have a doctorate. If you actually know what you're talking about, there's a huge difference on what you actually are. Like, honestly, one thing I found interesting is that you can look at Harvard, for instance, and there are a lot of people walking around Harvard that, I've got to be honest with you, look dumb as rocks. I don't know how they made it there, but they can't even answer simple questions, on YouTube. Of course, the videos may be selecting the people who can't answer the questions, but the fact that someone can make it to Harvard and not answer a simple question like how many stars are on the U.S. flag, or a basic trivia question like that, throws a lot in the question about how smart they may actually be. If you can't answer the basics, how can you answer the advanced questions? And so I don't really look at that stuff. I look at, do they seem knowledgeable? Yes or no? So, I guess the moral of the story there is don't judge a book by its cover. Judge it off of what the contents of it actually are. And that's kind of my assessment of how I go about things in life. And so with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And I just saw Kaltenberg say in the live chat in reference to that conversation, Kaltenberg says, college degree used to mean something, but grade inflation and crap course content has shot that to heck. And I have to agree with you completely, Kaltenberg. It feels like college is basically a money-making operation at this point. It's just about going through the hurdles to say that you did it, and you get this piece of paper, and it really means nothing, because then you're out on your own, sort of left to fend for yourself, and you really haven't learned much, to be totally honest, unless you're in a STEM field where you're learning like engineering or something like that.
And also to add to Matthew, because I have to agree with that. One thing I hate a lot about college is that y'all know that one of my tenets on this channel is to keep politically neutral. And one thing that I find incredibly annoying, and this doesn't really this goes in one direction over the other, but we won't mention which direction. the political dogma that's mentioned in college is insane, especially in state-funded institutions. I feel like it's incredibly distasteful, regardless of what position you're in, whether you're a college professor or a live streamer like me or someone on the news, to try and push political opinions as fact in a class, regardless what direction they're going in, whether it's right wing, left wing, whatever you'd like to call it. I don't feel like it's an appropriate place. Classes and information along with news should be presented as facts only. You can present both sides, but you shouldn't demonize one and glorify the other. That's for an individual to decide instead of trying to force them into one or the other. And that's one thing I found really annoying about college, is that I'm actually going through a class right now where there is political stuff going on today. And of course, whenever political stuff's going on now, I just take a neutral route. I just say it's going on, and that's the way it is. And the teacher said, no, it's actually going this way. And I'm like, well, I was like, well, historically, who are you to say that? Because the pages of history today haven't even been written yet. So why are you saying it like it's already a fact? And that kind of annoyed me a little bit, because I feel like everyone should be as neutral as possible, especially when talking about stuff. Like if someone comes from overseas and says, hey, what's going on with political thing so-and-so? I'm going to say, well, it's this problem, and these people are saying this, and these people are saying that, and they're kind of at an impasse right now. That's how I'd explain it. But if you ask an average college professor, they're going to put one spin on it or another, and I find that very distasteful, especially in the course of history where you should be looking at it with an unbiased eye. But with that, hope that does kind of address that a little bit and add on to what Matthew said. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $10 super chat from Robert McIver, who says, love you guys.
And I thank you so much for the support. And also, we love you too, man. And we thank you so much for enjoying this channel and the content we produce, specifically the news. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question. And thank you once again for the support.
All right. And up next, we have a $8 super chat from Putin while hanging in the middle of the Kremlin, who sends the cake emoji and the coffee emoji.
Well, thank you so much for the cake and coffee. Hey, Matthew, I think we're about to have some coffee cake, eh?
Yeah. Happy Canada Day, by the way.
What was that? That sounded sickly. You're like, But with that, thank you once again for the support. Happy Canada Day as well, and we will take that coffee cake. And so with that, we're going to move on to the next question, but thank you once again for the coffee cake.
All right, and moving on, we have a $5 super chat from Heather Timms, who says, love your videos. In your opinion, do you think that Putin will keep to his threats about attacking the countries that has sent help to Ukraine?
I think he will continue to keep with those threats. I think that is something that will most likely continue. He hasn't really let up on the threats yet. But at the same time, a lot of them have been hollow. We have tested some of his threats, and he hasn't really responded to them. So with that, I hope that does address the question. And with that, we're going to move on to the next one. But before we do, I just saw Ed A say college professors are people too. And I agree, but when you put someone in a position of power wherever they are to be dispelling something as fact or fiction, they should not have the ability to pick a side. That's something that we're losing these days in the modern world, is that everyone feels like if you give them a soapbox, they need to preach their own ideals as fact to everyone who has to listen to them. I don't agree with that. That's why I don't do it on this channel. And I've only done it once, and that was on public infrastructure. And I remember that moment because it happened about 4 days ago. But I don't think anyone should be given that position unless if you're a political figure who's actually running on those policies. And that's of course that's my opinion. And I think that's kind of the downfall. I think that's kind of a not really a downfall. I don't think anything's a downfall. I think that's a shortcoming of the modern culture in the United States, is that everyone's using every single moment they can to try and shove political opinions down each other's throats. So with that, we're going to move on to the next question, and I just wanted to address that real quick, Eddie, and I hope you understand where I'm coming from. And so with that, we're on to the next question.
All right, and up next, we have a $20 super chat from KG, who says, do you know how many NASAMS will be sent to Ukraine? They are a real game changer for anti-air capabilities. Ukraine needs to keep manpads near to defend them from SEAD missions.
Well, we do know that 2 of them are being sent over, and only 2 right now. We did see that in the letter today that we covered a little bit earlier from the Secretary of Defense. And so for now, we only know of 2. But they are game changers, but they do have a shorter range than the Patriot or Iron Dome system. And also, I do think that the Ukrainians do need to use manpads by and large for those kinds of missions, rather than trying to defend cities from cruise missile attacks. I also think that the Ukrainians are largely using bigger surface-to-air missile systems for those kinds of attacks. But with that, thank you so much for the support, and we're going to revisit this again. I know the question segment is probably going to go on a little bit longer. How many super chats do we have left, Matthew?
So we currently have about 10 to 11 more to get to.
All right, and so I'm going to cover this one more time, and then we're going to move on to answering the questions and not touching on this again for the sake of time. But someone in our live chat called Dory Tang, and I'd like to address this one directly, said, "Done with this channel now. Better places to get Ukraine news elsewhere. Universities are for debating different ideas. Give it up, dude." What a joke of a comment right there.
Listen, I will say this real quick. If you're in a university or you have been recently, you'll know that is entirely untrue. Most universities these days don't allow open debate, and they'll push one agenda down your throat.
That's true. And regardless of whatever college you go to, I'm not going to go into what kinds of political spheres you're going to get into at different kinds of colleges, but you either get one or the other. Right now, I'm in a university. I'm not going to say which one, but of course, I'm in one. I'm a senior right now. And I have to tell you that this university seems to be a university where you're either one with the rest of the group or you're out of the group. And it's incredibly annoying to me because as a person who takes a neutral stance and actually wants to take a look at the validity of the claims of both sides, it's incredibly annoying to me to sit there and hear someone say, this is the way it is, which is a certain political alignment, and this is the only way it can be. And in fact, we're going to grade you on your ability to recite pretty much these political talking points. Now, I'm in a class right now that's doing that. And I don't like that. You know, it's like I understand if we're looking at it in a historical context and it did end up being a certain way by and large, but to say something about it in the modern day is goofy. It's not even history yet. We're literally living it. And so saying that one side is the right side and that's the end of that is silly. But, you know, I mean, like, you can hold your opinions. I'm never holding anyone back from watching this channel or not. If you enjoy it, you enjoy it. If you don't, you don't. Apparently, you completely misunderstood what I was saying and then went off on a rant about it. And so, let's throw up a poll, Matthew. Who's the goofball here, him or me? And we'll see what they decide. And so with that, we're going to move on to the next one. And we're not going to cover that topic again just for the sake of time.
Yeah, we're going to leave that topic alone. I just want to end with this. Paul Smith is a university professor. He wrote in the chat that he has been one for over 40 years, or after 40 years. He says the enforcer's correct and colleges aren't what they used to be. I hear that from everybody, like ex-professors, you know, people that are older. I hear it from everybody, and it's just sad the way it's turned into that because, you know, you want to go to college and actually be able to debate things without the professor, you know, trying to basically tell you what to believe, and it's disappointing. But, you know, we'll let that go. We'll move back on to the questions, but I'm sure everybody's tired of hearing about all that. So, next up, we have an $8 super chat from the Vladinator again, who says, when you become an awesome lawyer, expert evidence in court can be someone who has a degree and worked in the field for a decade. When you object to an expert in court, pull them apart like that. And Vladinator, yes, I do know you have to have expert witnesses, and it depends on whose side they're on.
And that is very true. I do agree. It's always important to have expert witnesses. And unfortunately, with history, you can't really pull expert witnesses up, you know, most of the time, because usually they're underground already. But so in history, you always try and go for primary sources, which is something that was written by that very person. That's why when a lot of people say, he really meant this, he really meant that, it's like, why not just look at his memoirs, letters, and diaries and just read what he thought, because a lot of it was written. A lot of people used to write everything that was in their heads back then, and so you could get right into their mind space and know exactly what they were thinking. But a lot of people don't do that. But I do know what you're saying, and I do agree. Hopefully I can continue that over into court and shred people with this kind of ideology. But with that, I'm going to touch on this one more time, and I'm going to leave it at this. I'm never going to say what political ideology is what, because then people are going to throw me into one camp or another. So I see a lot of people, as usual, trying to tack it as a left-leaning university or a right-leaning university. I'm not going to say. I'm just going to say that regardless of which side you go to, you're either with them or against them, and they're not going to allow dissension. I'm just going to say that. So with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $5 super chat from Smoke, who does not leave a comment. And thank you very much, Smoke, for the support of the channel. We appreciate you very much. And moving on, we have a $5 super chat from Bremner's Ghost, who says, Snake Island is a death trap. Ukraine should plant the flag, mine it, and leave the island unmanned until the war is over.
Pretty solid idea. I think they should really not touch the island. It's not going to end well for them. The best thing they could do is just make sure that the Russians can never get a footing back there again. Just keep an artillery battery within range of the island somewhere along the coast. And if you ever see a Russian ship going to moor there at the island once more, just start bombarding the dock. Because there's only one dock on that island. It's very small. And so the Ukrainians could give it a decent amount of fire to the point that it wouldn't be an advantageous thing for the Russians to do. I can also agree with what you're saying. That's a pretty good idea as well. But I'm not sure if they have the ability to lay mines out that far at the island. So with that, I hope that does answer the question. And I thank you once again for the support. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Detroit Micro Sound, who says, wait until the Nassams are cruising around looking for stuff to play with.
Can you read that one again?
He says, wait until the Nassams are cruising around looking for stuff to play with.
Oh, yeah, that's a pretty good... I don't know if they're mobile, though. I think they... Well, let's pull it up. Let's find out. Nassams. It is a mobile system. It can be mounted on a vehicle. But we can also see some that are stationary. So I don't know if they're going to be trying to move these things around or not. They may just plant them in a city and pray to God that they actually work, which they will probably. But I don't know if these are the mobile versions or not. But if they are, I bet you they're going to be roaming around looking for a quick little snack somewhere. And so with that, thank you once again for the support. Hope that does answer the question. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from AP, who says, thank you guys. I look forward and watch this every night.
Well, I thank you so much for the support. I'm glad that you do enjoy this channel, and it's always wonderful to hear from return viewers who love to watch these shows nightly. I know that every once in a while, you know, there will be a little bit of contention. People will clash with some of the opinions I put up. I usually try and not make them political and just a critique. So I hope you still enjoy those. And even if we do disagree, you know, everyone can just agree to disagree. And with that, thank you once again for the support, and we're going to move on to the next one.
And moving on, we have a $5 super chat from Teresa Bass, who says, Enforcer, could y'all please go rescue Operator Starsky? He's covering some pretty nasty stuff.
We can try. We will look into it. Operator Starsky has been on our stream multiple times. We do keep up a little bit of contact with him, although it seems that him and us are incredibly busy and also in totally different time zones, to the point it's really hard to talk much. But I do thank you very much for the support, and we will look into it. And so with that, we are on to the next question.
All right. And I just noticed in the chat, if we could, folks, I know we kind of got right on the border of it, but if we could stay away from politics, please, so that way we don't get too deep into that rabbit hole, we'd be very appreciative of that. And moving on, we have a $5 super chat from Devin Betterton. Thank you very much for the support. He does not leave a comment. And moving on, we have a $5 super chat from Fife, who says, hey, Enforcers, how valuable do you think the German Jeopards, or Gepards, would be for Ukraine?
They'd be fairly valuable. I feel like they'd be more of an anti-infantry weapon than an actual, say, anti-air system. These kinds of anti-air weapons that use autocannons, like the Shilka or the Gepard, which we'll pull up right here, they have a very high rate of fire. And while it can be used against aircraft, these things are a little dated. Usually aircraft don't get close enough for these things to be usable most of the time. But this thing is mauler of infantry. These things will rip a infantry unit apart because it has two 30mm autocannons. Like, just imagine, that's like two BMP-2s firing at the same place at the same time. Kind of like a BMP-T Terminator, really. And so in that regard, I feel like Gepards would be very good anti-infantry weapons for the Ukrainians to use. So with that, I hope that does answer the question. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and real quick, let me get this one real quick. There we go. Up next, we have a $10 super chat from Nick Gaspy, who says, "We've heard about the attacks on the airports in Odessa, Hostomel, and Lviv. Have you heard about the condition of the Kiev Boryspil International? When orcs are defeated, it'd be nice to have an airfield."
Very great question, Nick. We haven't really heard much about the Kiev Boryspil airport, which is right here. I actually assumed that the Russians would go for that airport in the early parts of the war, but then they never did, and we haven't really heard a lot of news about it beyond that. Right now, we know that no flights are entering or leaving Ukraine, considering that it is a war zone, and so although it may be operational, which I'm assuming it most likely is, it's still not being used by the Ukrainians because there's no flights inbound or outbound. So with that, I hope that does answer the question. As far as I know, the Kiev Boryspil airport is in pretty good condition. So with that, we're going to move on to the next question, and I thank you once again for the support.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Devin Betterton again, who says, "Here's a donation to help cover Grandma's meal at the Cracker Barrel."
Well, I thank you so much for the support, and we are going to make sure to feed our grandmother the best Cracker Barrel there's ever been. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support, and with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $5 super chat from Sherry Ann Turpin, who says, "I'm a black feminist professor who enjoys your channel. I hear you and feel you, and keep going."
And I thank you very much for the support. Of course, it's always wonderful to have all kinds of people in the Lee Spring Army, and I'm glad that you can agree with us, even as a professor, because I feel like regardless of what political opinions anyone holds, when talking to other people and teaching them something, one's opinions should be put to the side. You know, a lot of people are very impressionable, and sitting there and trying to espouse opinions and beliefs onto someone else and try and make them their own feels very rude, pushy, and it's not really putting their views into consideration. Maybe there's a different ideology out there that's better for them. Who knows? You know, that's why I don't ever try and push my political opinions on stream to anyone, because I don't really feel like that's polite to people, you know? And also, I feel like it's very selfish, because it almost makes it seem like my political opinions, in my opinion, are so important I must espouse them to the world because no one's ever heard anything that good before. And I don't really like that idea, especially when I'm talking about news and such things like that, which a lot of people come on here to hear facts, you know, not opinions. And so I always try and make sure that opinions take to the wayside, unless if it's during a question segment like this, and then I just keep them as general critiques and not really make them political. But with that, I hope that does address the comment, and I thank you very much once again for the support. And with that, we're just on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $20 super chat from Augustin Lara, who says, "Rock on. I was made in Mexico and assembled in USA. 100 Enforcer."
Well, I thank you so much for the support, and that was a pretty funny comment. And it's good to know that you are in the United States. Welcome to, well, not really welcome to America. You've been here since the start, but I hope you're having a fun time here. And I thank you so much for being a member of the Lee Spring Army, and we will continue to rock on. And so thank you once again, Augustin. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
All right. And up next here, we have a $10 super chat from Robert Rodriguez, who does not leave a comment, I don't think. No, he does not. So thank you very much, Robert, for your support of the channel, and we appreciate you as always. Let's see here. Somebody said they think I might just got a troll, but I'm not sure what they're talking about. I'll have to check that out in a second. But up next, we have a $5 super chat from El Fuego, who says, "When the fall or winter weather hits the battlefield, how will this affect tactics, and who will it favor?"
It's going to favor the Ukrainians. When the fall weather hits, the Rasputitsa will begin. once more. The Rasputitsa occurs twice per year in Ukraine. That means that the ground's going to become the slush bog that we saw at the very start of the war, which means that the Russian armored units are not going to be able to disperse and create normal formations like we see right now. They're then going to be relegated to paved roads only. They're going to enter the columns that we saw at the very onset of the war, and the Ukrainians are going to be able to destroy Russian units at a higher rate. Now, one thing I will admit is that as the war is going on and the summer is set in, we've seen Russian casualties decrease. And that is because they're actually able to implement some of those tactics that they weren't able to during the last Rasputitsa season. And so once the fall season hits, the Russians are going to start taking higher casualties just because they're going to be relegated to roadways only. The Ukrainians don't really rely on armored vehicles as much as the Russians, and so they'll still be able to continue most of their tactics without hindrance, beyond the mud being the usual plight of the infantryman. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question, and I thank you very much for the support. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $4 super chat from NOYDB, who says, Enforcer, what fits into Russia? SCTV, search it on YouTube. It's 40-year-old comedy that you will enjoy. If you don't, I promise your money back.
Well, I thank you for the support, and we will take a look at it. I haven't watched a lot of Russian politics, well, like a lot of Russian TV shows or comedy or anything like that, but I will take a look at it and see if it is pretty good or not. So with that, I thank you very much for the support. We will take a look into it, and with that, we're on to the next one.
And moving on, we have a $4 super chat from Blue Marvel, who says, will NASAMS be able to stop cruise missiles to help defend against these terrorist attacks on civilians?
Can you reread that one again?
He says, will NASAMS be able to stop cruise missiles to help defend against these terrorist attacks on civilians?
Yes, they will be. NASAMS can actually shoot down cruise missiles, much like an Iron Dome, although slightly shorter range. And so the answer to that question is yes, they will be able to help. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question, and we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $2 super chat from Jay Bagwell, who does not leave a comment, and thank you very much, Jay, for your support. And up next, we have a $2 super chat from Mr. Lunchtime, who says, a few bucks to take grandma to Tasties, and that's about it.
Well, it's going to take more than a few bucks to get her to Tasties. We're going to have to get airplane tickets. But I do thank you very much.
You can get the whole menu at Tasties for $2 American.
Oh, yeah. Wait a minute. I'm sorry. I forgot. Tasties is McDonald's still over here. You know, it's literally the same thing in Russia. It's just that they've renamed the thing. So with that, I thank you so much for the support. We are going to get her some Tasties probably. It's the 4th of July, of course. And what's more American than McDonald's? And so with that, thank you once again. Hope that does answer the question. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right. And let's see here. I saw NOYDB say, don't read my other one. So, okay, I won't. I saw there were quite a few here. So I will combine them into one. Let's see here. So NOYDB leaves 1, 2, 3, 4 $2 donations. And thank you very much for your support, NOYDB. We appreciate you very much. And let's see, I'm getting a little confused here. There I was. So up next, we have a $20 super chat from Ryan Hughes once again, who says, the reason you have an audience of intelligent and high-income viewers is because you are humble and modest. You are unlike most of the narcissistic YouTube personalities who only do things for profit, and we certainly appreciate it.
Oh, well, I thank you very much for the support. I don't like to think of myself, I don't, you know, it's weird because I do love to take compliments, but at the same time, I always feel like I'm being not humble and not modest if I take them. So I'm kind of at an impasse there. But I do thank you very much for the compliments. And also, one thing I can say is that Matthew and me were actually talking about that before the stream about YouTube personalities out there who are a little narcissistic, and yeah, there's a lot of them out there. But I do thank you so much for the support. I'm not going to weigh in on that too much because, you know, if we go too far down the hole, we might start listing off names and then, you know, people get miffed and everything. And we don't want that. We're not trying to cause fights on here. We're just trying to report the news and just do our thing. So with that, I thank you very much for the support, Ryan, and also the kind words We try our best to be humble, and I try my best to act like I don't know everything, because of course I don't. There's a lot out there in the world, and there's no way that a single person could know every single thing about it. And so I thank you once again for the support. I hope you all enjoy it, and I just think those were very kind words. And so thank you once again. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
All right. And to answer your question, Duncan VR, no, I haven't tried the McPutin sheep burger yet, and I don't plan on doing so. And I don't plan on eating any spam either, in case you were wondering. But anyways, moving on, we have a $2 super chat from CA Lags, who says, I blame it all on college sports. Wink, wink.
I do agree, and I think I just had a way to explain this the best way. And it was actually a viewer, Cliff Mitchell, who said something that really summarized what I'm wanting to say. He said, college should teach you how to think, not what to think. And I highly agree. There was one class I took at a university. It was the history of Western civilization, 1600 to the present day. I had a college professor. His name was Mr. Michael. I'm not going to give his last name just for privacy reasons, but Mr. Michael was one of these guys who said, I'm not going to tell you what was right or wrong about history. History is history. It is what it is. And he taught the class like that. It was the best class I had ever had. In fact, what was really interesting to me is that he didn't put a spin on anything. He said, we are going, and on the same week, by the way, these were assigned readings on the exact same week. He said, y'all are going to read the Communist Manifesto by Karl Marx and Mein Kampf by Adolf Hitler at the same time. Literally the two opposite ends of the spectrum politically. And we read them. And then he talked about them, and he never once said anything, good or bad, about either the Communist Manifesto or Mein Kampf. And I was blown away, because that was the first time ever in college. It was the only time in college that I had a college professor actually expose people to very divisive things and not draw an opinion on them. He just stated what they were, what they said, and he left the students to come up with their own opinions on it. I thought that was the way to teach college. I think that's the way every single professor and teacher should go into it. As intellectuals, opinions should never get in the way of ideas and thoughts. You should always look at everything in a non-biased perspective, and if you are the presenter of this information, you should always make sure that it's non-biased, so that way everyone can come up with their own decisions and their own ideas on it, and then bounce those around, and then even more ideas can come up from it. And so I think that was the perfect way to explain it, is that college should be emphasizing how to think, not what to think. So with that, we're going to move on to the next question. I thought that was a perfect way to put it. And so with that, we're on to the next question.
All right, and up next, we have a $10 super chat from Santiago Flores, who says, good evening, to take grandmother to dinner. Enjoy.
Well, thank you so much for the support, and we are going to take her to dinner for sure. A lot of y'all have been wanting us to do that, and a lot of y'all are picking out Cracker Barrel, and so we'll see. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, and we're going to move on to the next question.
All right. And for our last super chat of the night, we have a $4 donation from Putin will hang in the middle of the Kremlin, who says, the war will end with Ukrainians winning, and Ukrainians are determined.
And I thank you so much for the support. Putin will hang in the middle of the Kremlin. You've been around for a while, and I will agree that hopefully Ukraine will win in the end of this war. I think they will. They've already stopped the Russians' momentum by and large, and that's the main key of turning a war around and bringing it back into your favor. And so with that, thank you so much for the support. And you said that was the last super chat of the night?
That's it.
Really? Well, with that, we're now going to move on to three live chat questions. I know it's a little bit of a small amount, but once again, we have run overtime. But I hope you all have all enjoyed why we ran overtime, which was the asides and stuff with the major topic of the night in the question segment. But with that, we're going to answer 3 live chat questions, and then we're going to round out the stream. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
And first up, we have a question from Logic Slayer, who says, Enforcer, what's the most important piece of military equipment in the war? I've been watching for a few weeks, and I really appreciate the updates. Slava Ukraine.
The most important equipment in this war on either side is the artillery. The artillery has never been this pronounced in a modern war until now. Artillery has, of course, always been used, but we've never seen it been used to this degree and to this kind of importance since, I would say, World War II. It's unbelievable how important artillery has become. And so I can't say a single individual system like the M777, the Caesar, the Mista B, the Mista S, any kind of artillery system is the most important equipment on the field right now. And so with that, and also just as a honorable mention, drones are second place. And so with that, we're going to move on to the next question. I hope that answers that, at least in my opinion.
All right, and up next we have a live chat question from Vicky Collins, who says, Enforcer, shouldn't sanctions be placed on every country that supports Russia in this war? After all, Russia is holding support for Ukraine hostage.
I do agree we should levy sanctions against the countries that are supporting Russia, but we've largely levied a lot of sanctions against them already. One of those countries is North Korea, and there's literally nothing else we can do to them. One of the countries that is supporting Russia is Cuba, and so in that regard, I think we ought to shut the Cubans back off and just sanction them into oblivion again, kind of like we've done for the past 60 years nearly. So, yeah, I think we should. By and large, we should. We almost did that with the Chinese, and that's what the Chinese have never really picked a side, and they're staying neutral. And I believe that they don't necessarily have to be pro-Ukraine. They just have to remain neutral. As long as the Russians don't have friends, regardless of whether we get them as friends or not, that's all that matters. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night.
And Enforcer, I will say that I do have quite a few live chat questions. Would you like to answer maybe a few more?
Sure, we'll answer like another 4.
Okay. So up next, we have a question from Pakatang, who says, Enforcer, do you think sanctions had more impact on countries historically or now in the modern era?
I feel like sanctions are having more of an impact in the modern era because international trade is more important now than it's ever been. There are certain kinds of materials and technologies that are produced exclusively in a certain country and not anywhere else. A lot of y'all may know that Japan, as well as Taiwan and South Korea, are kind of our tech countries of the world. They produce a large amount of the microprocessing chips and really everything involving computers these days. The Chinese are also a major I guess you could say competitor in that kind of market. And so by and large, you have to revolve a lot around Asian trade to be able to get a lot of these modern computer systems, processing chips and such things like that. And that's just one instance. There's a lot of other instances like that individually all around the world. And so you rely on their trade a lot to get that kind of technology and that kind of resource. However, in World War II, you didn't really have to rely on all of these complex international supply chains to be able to get this kind of tech. By and large, all you needed back then was a simpler amount of resources like just raw steel, and you could manage to make a tank. Of course, you would need the oil and such things like that, but by and large, a much simpler process. And that's why in World War II, you could see that the Germans were able to fare somewhat well, actually, for a good while in the war, even though they had been sanctioned into oblivion and literally been blockaded from any kind of trade with allied nations. Which, of course, the allied nations like Britain, as well as the Dutch, controlled pretty much all of the natural rubber resources in the world at that time. But the Germans didn't really rely on rubber all too much. That's kind of a whole complicated thing on its own because they didn't rely on rubber too much, but of course they had to have a substitute, and so one had to be made. But then, that's a whole other story. I'm not even going through it. But anyways, they didn't really rely on it that much back then because you didn't need these international supply chains to be able to get important stuff that the modern world relies on, like computer processing chips. So I'm just going to leave it at that. I hope that does answer the question. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and you wouldn't believe it, people. We are paid a visit by Dick Cheney.
Whoa.
Will Riley pops in and puts in a $20 donation and says, Dick Cheney is glad to see you are still here at this hour. I've been working nights lately and haven't been able to catch you guys.
Hey, that's okay, Will. I hope you were able to watch the replays. I hope you've been enjoying those. But it's good to have you back live on stream, and I hope you have been enjoying it tonight. Of course, we're on at this hour. It's been stretching on a pretty good while, almost 20 minutes overtime of what we've been trying to bring the streams back down to. But I thank you so much for enjoying them, and I'm glad to get a visit back from Dick Cheney. We hadn't seen him in a while, and it's good to see him again. And so thank you so much for the support, Will, and I hope you have been enjoying this stream, and I'm glad that you're able to catch us. And with that, we are on to the next question.
And before we get back to our live chat questions, we have one more super chat that came in from War Gecko, who puts in a $10 donation and says, "Keep up the good work. This is the first time I get to see the stream live."
Well, thank you so much for the support, and I'm glad that you have been finally catching it live. A lot of people do watch this in the replay, which is great. But it's always good to know that people are able to catch it live. And I kind of joke with Matthew before we start the stream how some people almost take this as a pilgrimage to be on a live stream. And I see people who will be in the chat and they'll be like, "I finally made it to a live stream," and it's almost like they've gone to like Jerusalem or Mecca or something like that. But I find it really neat, and so I thank you so much for the support, and also I'm glad that you're able to finally see it live. And so with that, I hope that has addressed the question. I hope that made your night, by the way. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we had one more super chat come in, this time from Eric Carrington, who puts in a $5 donation and says, "Thank you for your service, Nan Forcer and family," and then says something in a different language. I'm not sure what it says.
I believe that's either Welsh or Latin. I'm not particularly certain. Don't quote me on that. But I do know that that is some kind of a British motto. I think it's usually associated with the Prince of Wales, but I may be wrong. I think it's honestly associated with Welsh infantry in the British Army, just by and large. But unfortunately, I'm not really sure about that. But I do thank you so much for the support, Eric. I do see that you sent that in pounds, so I'm pretty sure that is what it's supposed to be. And so thank you once again for the support. And also, thank you so much for supporting my grandmother as well. She's become a bit of a minor celebrity tonight here on stream. And with that, we are on to the next question.
And one last super chat, and then we're back to our live chat questions. We have one from NOIDB, who puts in a $1 donation and says, "Liz Cheney is glad to have you back too."
Well, I thank you so much, and of course, we're always glad to have everyone enjoying these streams. Now, Liz Cheney.
Liz. Oh my God, I thought it said Liz.
Liz, but Liz Cheney, of course, is I don't really know a lot about Liz Cheney, honestly. I was going to try and add something there, but honestly, I just don't know much about Liz Cheney. But thank you so much for the support, and with that, we're on to the next question.
Is that Dick Cheney's daughter?
Maybe, but I'm not really sure. I don't know a lot about the Cheneys.
Yeah, well, that's weird. But anyways, back to our live chat questions. We have one from Nicholas Rodriguez, who says, "Enforcer, do you think after an agreement is made at the end of the war that Russia will just invade again in a few years to take more?"
I don't think they'll be invading in a few years. It's going to take them probably decades to rebuild their military. They may never recover from it, actually. And so I don't think they'll be doing that in a few years. They never reinvaded Georgia. Take that for what you will. It's almost been 13 or 14 years, and they never reinvaded there. So I don't think they would be doing that within the course of a few years. So I hope that answers the question, and I thank you very much for a pretty good question, actually. That's a pretty solid one. And with that, we're going to answer 2 more questions from the chat, and then we're going to round out tonight's stream.
And the next one is from Tony Thomas Jr., who says, "How long do you think this war will go?"
Oh, man. Honestly, that's a tough one to answer. I don't really know. It could go on for a few more months. It could go on for 2 years or more. It's just so hard to tell because anything can happen. I mean, like, the Russians could have a sweeping victory here within the next month where they encircle some 40,000 troops, and the Ukrainian military is put on the back foot permanently, and then the Ukrainians lose within 6 or 8 months. At the same time, the Ukrainians could manage to do something unbelievable, just like I said for the Russians, and then the war could be over within months, or everything could be going wrong for every side, and it goes on for years. There's just really no way to tell, and you kind of have to assess this on a day-by-day basis and just pray that the war ends soon. There's really no way to actually tell. So with that, I hope that does answer the question, and we're now going to move on to the final question of the night. And so who is the lucky last person who threw in the final question?
So the last question of the night comes from Sally Lulls, who says, "Enforcer, shouldn't NATO and allies like Australia be increasing the rate we build military equipment? If Iran, India, and China end up on Russia's side, there's going to be a major shortage very fast."
I would say maybe. They should be producing military equipment, but I don't believe they should be ramping it up like it's a wartime situation. And also, India is not going to go and join sides with the Russians. Neither is the Chinese. The Chinese are going to have a massive economic shrink if they did that, because of the sanctions from the EU and the United States. Their economy would be shrinking by $100 billion per year or more. The Indians as well would most likely not do something like that, because they generally try and stay as neutral as possible. It wouldn't be advantageous for them to actually try and go against the West, considering that they are trying to get up to speed pretty much. Iran, on the other hand, may actually join sides with the Russians, but I would have to look into their political situation a little bit more to see if that is a plausible outcome. But with that, I think that we should be producing military vehicles at least to replace the ones that we have sent over. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question, and I thank you once again for another good one, actually. That was a pretty good one. And so with that, we have reached the end of tonight's stream. It's going on a little bit long tonight. It's 3 hours in length, but I hope you all have enjoyed every single minute of it, because of course I enjoyed delivering the news to every single one of y'all, and also answering all of those very good questions, actually. Everyone had great questions tonight. And so with that, thank you all once again. If you are new to the stream and you're just watching, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We run these streams every single day, except for Mondays, at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, and cover the past 24 hours of the war in Ukraine. We also upload daily summaries as well. And so with that, thank you all once again, and I look forward to seeing y'all on here tomorrow for the Sunday night fundraiser. Also, thank you so much, Eric, for the £20 donation. That was very generous of you, and I thank you very much. And so with that, we are going to be going. Good night, everyone. Take care, and I'll see you all tomorrow on that Sunday night fundraiser.